What's up and welcome back to another live stream unboxing review with Gizmo Slip Tech. Today we've got the MSI Cyborg 15. This RTX 4060 only costs $10.99, but is it actually worth buying? So today we're going to find out. We're going to test it. We're going to play games with it, hopefully. Hopefully, we don't run into any issues. I've installed a few games, and I repackaged it back up together. I did the driver updates and Windows updates, all that. So it should be good to go for some testing and benchmarking today as well. We're going to test the display and see how bright and vibrant it is. We're going to test the keyboard, the trackpad. We're going to check out the ports. We're also going to take the bottom off and see what it's like on the inside, what that thermal cooling solution looks like, and see what kind of upgradability it has, as well as seeing how hard it is to take this thing apart. We're going to evaluate the build quality, how flexy it is, and we're going to compare and contrast this against the other laptops in the $1,100 price segment. I've actually got them already pulled up. So we're going to start with this comparison, at least a feature spec comparison, right away here at the beginning. All right, I see a bunch of people already in chat. Some people trying to claim first, LOL. All right, so let's go ahead and get into our side-by-side comparison. So the first, or not side-by-side, but feature comparison to see what other options are out there, right? So we've got the MSI Delta 15. Well, first, what are the specs on our Cyborg that we're dealing with today? Okay, so we've got the MSI Cyborg 15. It's a i7 12650H. I did buy this from Best Buy, and there is a link in the video description down below if you want to check this out. And there's a link to my comparison shopping sheet as well if you'd like to check that out. And here's where you can easily find links to all these other laptops that I'm about to talk about. Now, I bought this from Best Buy on March 14th, apparently, is when it was actually delivered a couple days ago. But I did order this a while ago. It took almost three, 4 weeks for it to come in. Now it's currently in stock, so you can buy this today if you end up deciding you want to. I'm not necessarily recommending that yet. We're going to test it and see what we think about this thing. There's definitely some major drawbacks to this Cyborg 15 you need to be aware of before you buy it, right? So anyway, let's continue on. So this is where I bought it. The specs on this guy are kind of impressive for the money. You got the i7 processor, RTX 4060, but it's only a 45 watt. You also have 8 gigs of DDR5 4800 RAM. So DDR5 is supposed to be okay, better in these single channel memory orientation than DDR4 is. So maybe we'll get some better performance out of only one stick of 8 gigs of DDR5. I'm assuming it's a one stick of 8 gigs. Now, I still recommend 16 gigs of RAM in every laptop, pretty much, if you want to be able to play every single game. Now, plenty of games will play just fine on 8 gigs, but some games are going to really chug only on 8 gigs. And if it's single channel, in theory, dual channel usually offers better performance. Now, this is the laptop, if you are going to save your money and you want to get the best possible performance, this laptop should deliver far better performance than this Cyborg 15 and at a lower price point. Now, this MSI Delta 15, it's not necessarily a perfect laptop. There's still going to be issues with it, but it is a very lightweight laptop, supposed to weigh only 4.2 pounds, fairly thin. It's not the highest power limits, but it's got a nice full HD 240 hertz display. I believe that's a 300 nits display, so it should be brighter and more vibrant than the one we have in this guy. You get 16 gigs of RAM instead of only 8, and you get an RX 6700M with a Ryzen 7 8-core 5800H. So this guy is like probably the top competitor right now. It's only on sale temporarily from Best Buy. There's a link again on my sheet if you want to check out this MSI Delta 15. This deal won't be up here forever though. This laptop is going to sell out or go off sale, and so you got to take advantage of it when you got it if you're interested in this one. Now, the Acer Nitro 5, this guy costs $999. And it comes with an RTX 4050. You can get it equipped with an RTX 4060 for a little bit more. I'm curious about the display on this guy. I actually did get this confirmed to be shipped to me yesterday or like today. So it's not arrived yet, but I'll be doing a live stream unboxing of this Acer Nitro 5 with an i5 12600H. I think it has an RTX 4060 in mind. 16 gigs of DDR5, 512 gig. Again, links are in this sheet if you're interested in checking out this laptop. I did end up buying this one from Newegg. And so I definitely would recommend considering the Acer Nitro 5 as an alternative to this one. The Gigabyte G5, which I've already done a detailed live stream unboxing of this guy, this Gigabyte G5, the main issue with it was the power adapter was going out on me in the middle of playing games. So I don't know if that's specific to my unit or it's happening to anyone else. But I may end up returning this and then getting a new unit that has a different power adapter, and maybe then it'll perform properly. But that was the biggest issue I had with it. It definitely had a little bit better screen than what I'm expecting on this laptop today. Wow, it's already on sale. $50 off for the Gigabyte G5 right now. That's interesting. Limited time off. $50 off on this Gigabyte G5. Interesting. Was not expecting that to happen so quickly. Lenovo Ideapad 3. So this one has a Ryzen 7 7735HS. This is a previous gen processor right here. RTX 4050, 16 gigs of DDR5, 512 gig SSD, and a full HD 120 Hz display. This is going to be very similar to the Lenovo I tested against the Steam Deck a few days ago. So this laptop is also going to be a decent bang for the buck, potentially. Should have a higher TDP limit than the Cyborg with the RTX 4050, though, and it costs the same price. So, and hopefully this display might be also a little better than the one we've got today. We don't know yet, really. We gotta do some testing on the Cyborg and see exactly what we got, right? So, overall, I think the Cyborg is a really interesting value proposition for people. It certainly has weaker internals and weaker display options than, say, if you were to buy last gen at the same price. There's quite a few RTX 3060s or maybe even 3070s that end up dropping down to this price range, or Radeon GPUs, like in the Zephyrus G14 was $1,000 recently, as well as the MSI Delta 15, and those laptops do come with better displays than this. So that's probably the biggest con going into this that I think we're going to run into is either lower power limits on the GPU and CPU, and then potentially the display. I think I'm going to like just about everything else about this laptop. I don't know, but yeah. So if you're the kind of person that wants to maximize your performance, I'm thinking the Cyborg's probably not going to be for you, but maybe it's going to surprise us, and maybe 45 watts will actually be enough power to really get some good performance out of the RTX 4060. We just got to get in some games and try it out and see what we see, right? So, okay, so I'm seeing checking chat right here. Compared to the G14 at $1,099 with a 6700S, G14 probably has better overall quality and screen. Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. Bought the Nitro 5 3050, good. 12 Gen i5, 16 gigs of RAM, nice. Katana is more expensive this year. That's right. Interesting. Price the same as the G5. Yeah, so this is the similar value proposition to the Gigabyte G5. Hopefully, don't run into power adapter issues with this one too. Yeah, have you seen the new Lenovo's Pro? Are they equals to Pro 5 and Pro 7 in chassis? So those laptops are going to be quite a bit more than this laptop. The Lenovo 5 Pro and Pro 7 or whatever. Those are going to be a bit more on the price range, but also nicer in other aspects, right? So you get more value, higher price, all that stuff. So today we're going to try to talk about every single aspect of the Cyborg 15 that you might be wondering about, pretty much. So let's go ahead and dive into the unboxing, see what's in the box, and then take the bottom off, just do the display tests, we're going to test a bunch of games, Cinebench, Timespy, wrap up, summary at the end of everything that we have found. So without further ado, let's get to this unboxing. All right, so this is the outer layer box. This was shipped inside of another box. So this is the second layer. And then you get another box inside. And this box is actually pretty dang stylized. Look at that. It's got a cool MSI Cyborg 15 design to it. I do like this box, especially for the price point. Usually you don't get any kind of fancy box in this price category. So here's the laptop. Let's open it up. Shaboom. All right, so there it is. We've got a metal top deck. right here. And notice how thin this thing is. It's a very thin laptop overall, weighing less than 5 pounds. So when you judge this laptop, you do got to judge it based on its weight class against the other laptops in this category, right? So, and there definitely are some very good things about this laptop, and obviously some cons as well. We're gonna try to go over all of those today. So you get some stickers with the laptop. I guess these are, oh, it must be inverted because you're gonna stick them on stuff. I was like, none of this stuff is spelling real words. But yeah, they must be inverted because you go stick them on other stuff. And so you get stickers, you get your quick guide here. And so here's the quick guide. MSI limited warranty. You get 12 months of warranty. And here's the support number if you need support. Looks like, there we go. And we'll do that, and we'll do that. All right, so save that number if you need support. A 12-month warranty. And that is not accidental coverage, just regular warranty. And we got ourselves a quick setup guide. This will go over all your ports and everything about the laptop. Nothing too complex about this laptop though. Essentially, the most important thing you need to know when you're setting it up is you got to plug it in before you can power it on. All right, at least for the first time. Now inside of here we have our power brick. Let's take a look at that. So first we have our power cable. This guy is about 6 feet long. And then we have our Delta power brick. And this is only a 120 watt power brick. So it's very small and very light. It's definitely going to be a very portable power brick for you if you need to take this around with you on the go. I mean, we are dealing with fairly low TDP components in this laptop, so it makes sense, right? That the power brick would not need to be very big. That's actually, I think, an advantage of lower TDP laptops, being able to have that smaller power brick. Now, let's go ahead and get when we open this guy up, we do have a little fiber cloth in here on the keyboard. And so there's the laptop right there. Let's go ahead and put that to the side for now. Let's put the box away. All right, so the laptop is completely turned off right now. Let's go ahead and do a flex test going around the laptop. No flex, minimal flex, is a little bit around the keyboard, but very little flex. It's actually surprisingly solid. Minimal flex on the side, no flex over here in the corner. A little bit of flex, but it feels like I'm just pushing down on the rubber feet. The laptop chassis is actually not bending that much. In the middle, just a little bit of flex. No flex in the corners again. A little bit of flex over here on the right. Coming through the middle, a bit of flex right here. Not much flex in the middle, actually. That's pretty good rigidity overall. Going through the keyboard, a bit of flex in the keyboard, but actually very minimal, very rigid, sturdy feeling build so far. And if we go to let's go ahead and just do a hinge test. All right, so the hinge can go all the way back. So if you need to share the screen with someone across from you. I gotta say, the hinge itself feels pretty solid, but there's a little bit of wobble to it when you set it somewhere. But it feels really solid. These hinge designs from MSI, I'm not sure if these are gonna last super long time or not. It all depends on how they've actually designed the connectors. Historically, MSI hinges have failed, so I do recommend extended warranties on most laptops, but especially ones like this. Okay. Mohammed says, in my opinion, this laptop's made for on-the-go gaming at 45 watts. I don't know. Yeah, and Don Don says it comes with one fan, right, for cooling. I believe that's correct. We're going to see that here in a moment. We're about to take the bottom off and check out the internals. So, yeah, there we go. All right, so that's kind of like the feel of the laptop. It feels surprisingly solid with the metal top deck. That gives it a little bit more of a premium feel than some of these all-plastic laptops. And it feels more rigid, I would say, than most laptops at this price point. So that's kind of like, I guess, 2 points for this laptop in its favor. This says MSI True Gaming. And on the bottom here, you can see it's an all-plastic bottom, and it's translucent. You can see through this into the motherboard here, and to underneath the plastic here. So that's kind of cool that it's translucent. Let's go ahead and take the bottom off now. Choo-choo. Gaiman. It's misspelled. Yeah, they've got kind of they got themselves a silliness in the way they spell it. You know, they're trying to be playful, I guess. Looks like all you need is a Phillips head screwdriver to get this thing off, but you're probably going to want it to be a magnetic head screwdriver. And there's a link in the description to this toolkit if you want to pick up the similar toolkit to what I'm using to open these laptops. This is an excellent toolkit for handling laptops, and I've had the toolkit now for like 5 or 6 years. It's been great. All right, looks like there is a factory seal screw. MSI likes to do this, but I have had no problems returning laptops or getting factory service repairs if I take this screw out. The tricky part is you just got to make sure you don't actually do any damage to the laptop. If it appears that you damaged the laptop, they may not cover your warranty, and that's going to be true whether you have a factory seal or not. Like if it's like a purposeful user done damage, you know. All right, so looking around here, is there any other screws? I don't think so. I think I got all the screws out. So that was pretty quick, getting those screws out. Not too many, not many screws here in the middle. Let's see if we can get the chassis to pry open. All right, so into the AM. I got my astronaut shirt on today. I love space. I'm a huge fan. I'm like a space nerd. Took astronomy class as one of my electives in college because I'm just like a huge fan of astronomy. I love Elite Dangerous. So anyway, I love spaceships. I've always loved that stuff growing up. And I'm a huge sci-fi nut too. So anyway, that's why I like this shirt. It's not necessarily the most stylish shirt, but it's kind of astronaut. Anyway, link in the description to Into the AM if you want to pick up some nice shirts. They're high quality. They last a long time. And I've enjoyed using them. If you do use the link, it does help support me as a content creator. But yeah, if you're just in the market for some shirts, there you go. 10% off if you use that link, by the way. It's got a coupon code all baked into the deal. So I'm using the pry tool a little bit to get in there a little better because the guitar pick was not getting it to pop fully. So the rear of the laptop's going to be interesting to take off. I think it's going to be the hardest part. Because it looks like it wraps around the bottom in an interesting way. Alright, so we probably got to get this part separated right here first. There we go. So, not the easiest laptop to take apart with this. You definitely would want the plastic pry tools to get this off, because it kind of wraps around the backside. It does help give the chassis a little bit more rigidity probably though, having it wrap around the backside like that. Alright, so we finally got it up. Let's go ahead and take a look at the inside. Alright, so checking chat. I wonder if this is better or worse than the Katana. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, it's obviously going to perform lower. The Katana had a higher power limit than this. But in terms of the internals, let's check it out. All right, so this looks like a very bare bones internal setup. So this is the battery. I don't see any rated wattage on it. Let me check the website for technical specs on the wattage on this. So here's the Cyborg. It's a 53 watt hour battery. All right, so not a very high watt battery. But it's also kind of a lower power draw processor and GPU. So I'm guessing you're gonna get like between 3 to 5 hours of battery life on it anyway. Plus, the screen is a lower brightness display, so it's not going to take as much juice as these brighter, more vibrant displays, especially the mini LED displays. All right, so let's take a look at the RAM here and the SSD. So here's the SSD. Looks like it's a Samsung SSD. This says Samsung Electronics at the bottom. It's a 512 gig SSD though. Our RAM is right here. And it's got a little spacer on top of it. You can see it's an AX201. AX201 NGW. And so that's designed to keep chassis rigidity right there. I'd really like to take this shroud off, if we can get it off. Such a pain in the butt because it really gets like all the little clips on there. Don't want to let it come up. Let's see if I can give you guys a camera angle here as I try to get this up. I've had a problem getting the shroud to pop up before. I'm actually going to use the prying tool here. Take the battery connector out first. Because this is a metal shroud and it can short your... Huh. The battery connector does not want to come. There we go. Finally got it. Okay, so whenever you're dealing with something the metal, like this metal shroud, you want to disconnect that battery. Because otherwise you're going to have some real problems. Alright, so I got to be careful. We also got this tape right here. Let me refocus this again. We also got to get this tape up. Alright, so It's good. You gotta get it to disconnect from all the different areas. And there's our RAM. You can see we've got one open SODIMM slot, one closed SODIMM slot, or sorry, one utilized SODIMM slot. Let's go ahead and pop this up. And what we have in here is, let me see if I can zoom it properly and focus. It's Samsung 1RX 16 PC5, so DDR5 4800 memory. All right, so that's some decent RAM, not the most expensive RAM necessarily, but I love that it's DDR5 in this laptop. That should be helpful. If you want to improve performance, I definitely recommend a second stick of Samsung RAM, and you can match that precisely now that we've taken this cover off and given you an opportunity to look underneath. So it's easier to order your RAM if you need to order that RAM. All right, so now we've got to put this back together again. Make sure it goes back in all of the little grooves and slots just right. And then let's retape this down, just like it was before. All right. So that's the RAM. It's kind of a pain in the butt to take the RAM on and off there. Let's go ahead and get the laptop back over here and let's evaluate this thermal cooling solution. All right, so initial thoughts on this. We've got our left and right audio speakers. These speakers don't seem that big. I guess they're decent for the size of this laptop. I don't know. But the thing is, there's a lot of empty space here, right? So we could have better speakers here. We could have more battery put in here. There's only one SSD slot. I wish there was two SSD slots. It's kind of sad that there's not, at least two SSD slots. Notice that we only have one fan in this laptop, right? Only one fan. That's going to be interesting to see what kind of performance you can get with only one fan, right? These new RTX 4000 series, they do have a 4nm node process, so maybe it'll still put out some good performance. Decent enough to at least play 1080p games on medium to high settings is my hope. But we already know that the GPU is supposed to only be 45 watts. Now this, I believe, is going to be your GPU. This is going to be your CPU. Notice that the two ends here end on the CPU, so hopefully the CPU performance is still going to be pretty good. We've got predominantly shared heat pipes here with one heat pipe directed to the GPU only, one shared heat pipe here, and then we've got the VRMs covered with this pad, as well as right here we've got VRMs with the pad right here. And we've got two exhausts, one on the back, one on the side. This is on the left side of the laptop, so it's not going to be blowing on your mouse hand. Like most laptops do have exhausts on the right and left side, and so you usually do end up with exhaust blowing on your mouse hand if you're right-handed, but you won't have that problem with this laptop unless you're left-handed. So yeah, that's kind of, I guess, a brief overview. This is definitely a very bare bones internals to this laptop without a doubt. And it really, like, just looking at the internals here, you can basically tell the price point of this laptop is on the low end. All right. This is not a high-end internal setup for sure. Now, before we put the lid back on, we got to plug our battery back in as well. So we're going to use our plastic tool and our fingers, and we're going to direct it to go back in. There we go. So we're snug back in. So our battery's plugged back in again. Let's go ahead and put the laptop casing back on. Let me zoom out and scooch over here to this side again. And let's get this thing reattached. You definitely want to start on the back. I just thought about that in a moment. You want to get this thing attached going on the rear of the laptop first, and then work around the sides to the front. Okay. It's not very interested in fully popping back together right now, which is interesting. Come on, buddy. You can do it. This could be this is definitely going to be an issue for some owners if you're wanting to upgrade the RAM or do other upgrades. You want it to come back together and then stay together. I can tell this is not fully connecting and seating down all the way. So it's interesting. That's interesting. Okay, so I'm gonna need to, it seems to be sticking together now, but it's still not. There we go. It was like it was coming together in the wrong spot or something. And now we're snug back together. No problem. Okay. Very good. All right, so now we can go ahead and put this laptop back together again with the screws. It's so empty. Yeah, it definitely, you can tell that, you know, it's not an expensive laptop based on how much space on the inside is being utilized. Like MSI's goal with this laptop is to provide a decent gaming experience on a budget, right? Like that's their objective. They're trying to do it at the lowest price point that they possibly can and try to make this laptop look cool, feel cool when you use it. But yeah, their goal does not seem to be necessarily providing the top end performance. The upgradability score on this laptop is very low. At least you got 2 SODIMM slots, and you can obviously upgrade the SSD to a larger one, but I wish it had a second M.2 SSD slot. That's kind of sad that it doesn't have a second slot. So we're all screwed back together now. Let's go ahead and flip this thing over, turn it on, and get testing. All right, so ports. We have a USB here. I need to pull up the tech specs to make sure we've got all of the right ones here. So it looks like we have 2 USB-A 3.2 Gen 1s and 1 USB-C 3.2 Gen 1. And the HDMI port on it is a 2.1, that's really nice actually. So this is a USB 3.2, a USB-C 3.2, HDMI 2.1, and then we have a Gigabit Ethernet, Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.2. No ports on the back, 1 exhaust on the back. And then on the right side, we have another exhaust, another USB-A 3.2, and a headphone port. So the ports on this guy are definitely very minimal. Definitely very minimal. And the power adapter port is also on the right side, which is a little interesting. So the power adapter port's right there on the right side. You know, I prefer to have most of the ports on the left side being a right-hand user, but if you're a left-hand user, I guess there's an advantage. This laptop mainly has the ports on the right side. All right, so there's that. Let's go ahead and turn it on. It has a really nice backlit keyboard. This keyboard's actually a really great keyboard for the money. And I believe this is a glass touchpad. I think this is a glass touchpad. It feels like glass. And notice the keyboard on a 15.6 inch even has a number pad. This is the exact same keyboard as the GT77, which, isn't that interesting? A GT77, it's like the same layout, but this is a 15-inch budget laptop. The other thing that I will say about this keyboard is that it feels really good to type on, like for the money. Okay, this is a better keyboard. I did the XMG Neo 17 review yesterday, and that keyboard is a membrane keyboard kind of like this one, but this one actually has a nice shunk to the keys. Like you press it, it has a nice key action. They go down. and it feels very deliberate, where the Neo 17 keyboard felt more like mush when you pushed them. You know, it just kind of felt like you know, it didn't have the same chunkiness to it. All right, and then the backlight on this one is way brighter than the Neo 17. So just give you an idea, like this is only one color. It's a baby blue color. It looks pretty cool though, and it feels really good to type on. And you do have the WASD keys. And notice how bright this keyboard backlight looks, even though my studio lights are on. Let's go ahead and turn the lights off, and you'll be able to see how bright this thing is. It's an extremely bright keyboard for the money. I'm not saying it's the best keyboard necessarily for the money. All right, and it has 3 levels of brightness, so you can turn it on and off. And overall, I like the keyboard for the money. All right, it's a good keyboard layout, good keyboard design. The number pad, some people don't really like kind of the scrunchiness of this number pad. I don't really mind it too much. I think it's still a very functional number pad, but it's not a full-size number pad. So just know that this is still, I think, one of the most functional keyboards you're going to get in a 15-inch chassis. All right. If anything, I feel like the complaint would be that the GT77 should have a better number pad than this, because this, you know, being a budget machine, I like the number pad setup overall. All right, so we're logged into Windows now. There is no Windows Hello on this laptop. It's a budget laptop. They have no money for a Windows Hello. Like I said, the trackpad actually feels really good for the money as well. Like I said, I think this is a glass touchpad, but it might be plastic. It's hard. Sometimes it's hard to tell. Certain types of plastic have this similar feel, but either way, this keyboard and trackpad feel really good for the money. And given how sturdy and rigid this thing feels, the input for the keyboard and trackpad are above average, I think, for this price point. The thing is, the ports are not that good. At least the quality of ports you have are good, but the amount of ports is very poor. Only 2 USB-As, 1 USB-C, no SD card slot, no mini display port, no extra USB-Cs, no Thunderbolt 4 support, and the Wi-Fi is only Wi-Fi 6, not 6E, but at least it is Bluetooth 5.2. So there is some pros and cons to the connectivity of this device. Let's go ahead and pull you up to the display. So here's the display. It's a 15.6-inch, 144 hertz full HD display. And this is going to mean a few different things. You're going to have some decent gaming potential on the display, given that it's 144 hertz, but not all 144 hertz displays are made equal. A lot of 144 hertz displays are kind of crappy. All right, so you got to understand that some of them are going to have higher brightness, better color gamut, better contrast, and this is going to arguably be one of the worst displays money can buy in 2023. Let's go ahead and do a backlight bleed test as well. Hello, everyone. You can see the back of my head. As well as the Spyder 5 Elite, and see what the color gamut is on this guy. So, backlight bleed test. Let's go ahead and do that first. MSI Cyborg 15 or Gigabyte G5. I'm thinking I'm going to do a side-by-side stream, and we can test both the laptops side by side. It'll also give me another chance to talk about that more in detail and give you guys all of the pros and cons to it, and then also run benchmarks side by side. Would you guys like that? Cyborg 15 versus Gigabyte G5, the exact same price, very similar specs. Yeah, Real Human says side by side would be good since they're direct competitors. Yeah, I agree. I think I'm probably going to do that. So be ready for that stream coming up, and be sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss out on that, right? And hit that notification bell so you can come to the live stream. And if you're enjoying this live stream so far, I would invite you to smash that like button. It does help me as a content creator out. So thank you very much. Absolute says, I admire your reviews. So much passion inside. Thank you, man. I try. I mean, I am very passionate. I know what it's like to be someone shopping for a $1,000 laptop. I have been that person many times in my life. I have owned like 60, 70 laptops for my own personal use probably now at this point. but like well over 150 laptops for reviews when you count all the reviews I've made. And so I've been in that position where you had to buy a laptop without knowing enough about it, whether it's going to be good or it's going to be bad. So I'm trying to help you guys out from a perspective that I'm familiar with, I guess, you know? So, and I'm trying to explain it in a way that anyone can understand as well. All right, so here is the display. We have a completely black image on there right now. And I gotta say, it looks pretty good for backlight bleed. There's not much backlight bleed on this panel. Let's turn all the lights off though, so we can see a little bit better. There's a little bit of backlight bleed along the bottom edges here, a little bit up here. The camera is picking it up a bit more than me as a user would pick it up though. Backlight bleed is the kind of thing you would experience if you're watching, say, a dark movie or playing a dark video game. That's basically what when backlight bleed comes into play with the display panel, and you'll end up seeing some kind of like white bars or white images coming up. Overall, the backlight bleed on my unit is very minimal, I would say. So that's very good. All right, so display test, and then we'll do a speaker test. So I need to load up. I don't know if I've installed my Spyder 5 Elite. I just got this laptop basically this morning, so I tried getting everything set up on it really fast so I can still stream on the same day I'm doing the setup process. It takes me probably 4 to 5 hours of effort to get everything installed and set up all the games and drivers and Windows updates. It takes at least that long. So I'm hoping we don't run into any more things that I forgot to install. We'll see. Medback asks, what laptop do you recommend at the $1,400 price point? So at $1,400, there's a couple different ways you can go. You could go with like an RTX 3070 that's on sale. Probably some of the best 3070s, 3070 or 3070 Ti that's on sale. I would go that route if you're primarily an esports player and you want a better display. If you want a blend, if you're a single player gamer, I would highly recommend checking out my Zephyrus G16 review. I can show you this real quick. This laptop costs a bit more than the one we're dealing with today, but I really enjoyed my time with the G16. This is a very premium experience. You get Windows Hello, you get a high quality full HD display, RTX 4060 that goes up to 120 watts, great keyboard, nice backlight, great touchpad. For the money, it's going to be a great single player gamer, and I have a full detailed breakdown on this laptop if you want to check it out. So for a little bit more, it's $1,449. I imagine it might go on sale at some point and go down to like $1,300 or something. That'd be the time to buy it necessarily. It's got a very portable form factor. If you want something that's not as portable and you want to spend a little bit more money, my next recommendation around this price point is going for the Legion 5 with an RTX 3070 Ti. Ryzen 7 6800H. This is going to be very high performance for esports games and raw rasterization for the money. And this one's going to be really, really great. Overall, though, the biggest value here is the 2 terabyte SSD, because that's a huge difference. And then, of course, the 3070 Ti being a high wattage 3070 Ti should put out good performance. And you can find all these links right here on this laptop list. If you need something super portable, we got the Zephyrus G14. This is the smaller version of the G15. And this one has a Radeon RX 6800S in it. So it's got another kind of older generation, but higher power Radeon GPU in here. A QHD 120 hertz 500 nit display. That's a gorgeous display for the price point at $1299. So that's something that's gonna be very portable and still get a lot of performance. So it looks like Spyder 5 Elite is installed. Let's go ahead and get that sucker opened up. And see if what our display analysis is. I'm gonna have to type in the code to activate this. All right. So there we go. I mean, we are plugged in. Let me try unplugging and replugging. There we go. All right, so we'll go ahead and type in my code, and then we'll be good to go. All right. So we're going to go to display analysis. We're going to go to it's already open. All right, so we're going to begin our tests. We're going to test the color gamut and our display brightness. And I'm not expecting too much. I'm thinking we're going to get around, I'm thinking around 250 nits and 50% sRGB. I don't know, somewhere in that range. It's not, this display, we already know it's not that vibrant. It's not that bright. It's a budgeted display, and it's as budget-ish as you can possibly get in a entry-level laptop, right? It's definitely going to be very budget. How good is the desktop? Same waiting long for a 49 to come down a little bit before building a setup myself. Saved up for freelance. Expensive though. Probably get this G16 4070. What do you think about this one? The G16 with the 4070. So the more expensive you get, the higher end laptop you get, the less likely I'm going to recommend going. Especially in the thin and lights, the less likely I'm going to recommend going for something like that because you get basically diminishing returns. The more powerful your GPU, the more power hungry it gets. I think a 4070 is probably about the highest I'd recommend for the Zephyrus lineup in terms of getting your decent bang for the buck. Otherwise, in general, I would probably recommend jumping to something more like the Strix G16. Or maybe the Scar 16, obviously depending on your price range, right? How much is that Zephyrus G16 with a 4070? Because basically, I think it probably could be a pretty decent bang for the buck if it's priced right. It just depends. 270 nits, I'd say 70% sRGB. We're about to find out. Could you try Cyberpunk Benchmark with an external QHD display for this laptop? Yeah, we might try that. I've got my projector today, and we've got, so my benchmarks that I do comparison numbers with are going to be QHD Plus, which is 16:10 aspect ratio. So if we want to be able to do comparison benchmark numbers, I need to use my external display for at least those benchmarks. Obviously, that's not going to represent the internal display's performance, though. Okay. Looks like our test is done. Let's find out what we get. All right. Wow, this is a little higher than I was expecting. So we got 64% sRGB, 49% of Adobe RGB, 48% of the P3 color gamut. And you got to keep in mind that my Spyder 5 Elite underestimates the color gamut by about 8 to 9% usually. So in reality, this is closer probably to like 71, 72%, maybe 73% of the sRGB, 56% Adobe, 56% P3. Our color brightness, or our brightness and contrast, 12 nits on the low end is very dim. I like that. Good contrast ratio at that level too. 233 nits on the screen brightness. 1100 to 1 contrast ratio. The contrast ratio is very good. The brightness is very poor for a laptop display. This is only gonna let games look pretty decent in a fairly darker room. Okay, so if you're in a very bright living room, it's going to be a little hard to see the display. And if you use this laptop outside, you're basically not going to be able to see the display at all in the daylight. And so the only place where you're going to be able to use this laptop display effectively is going to be moderate to dimmer environments, indoor areas mainly. All right. The contrast ratio at 1100 to 1 is actually above average for laptop displays these days. So it's got that going for it. And the color gamut was a little bit better than I had anticipated, actually. And this, so basically this is very similar display, probably the same panel as what's in the Katana 15, that costs $15.99 or $14.99. The thing is, you can definitely get better displays for the money, right? Like the MSI Delta 15, 240 hertz full HD, that sucker, that should be like a 300 nit display, I believe. So if we go back over to here and I just show you. So here's the MSI Delta 15. It costs $8.99 and it's got a much better display with more RAM and a bigger SSD here. So I really like, just if you're looking for something with a better display, this is going to be the better display for the money and more graphical performance probably for the money. I haven't tested it though, so it might not be better graphical performance. We need to find that out, right? But in general, this is a very good value at $8.99. Anyway, so moving on. So we've got good backlight, no backlight bleed. Display's very dim. Contrast is good. Color gamut's not that great. Let's move on to our speaker test. All right, so let's back it up. Let's turn this light on. All right, and we're gonna scooch this kind of like that. Let's do that. Okay, that's good. And we're gonna do Roar by Peter Spacey. I downloaded the file, so we don't have to log into the website anymore. And I've got the mic. We're gonna hold it about 10 inches in front of the laptop, kind of about where your head would be if you were gonna be using this laptop. All right, speakers are turned all the way up. And let me double check right here. All right, I do like the wallpaper. Cool wallpaper done on this. Yeah, MSI's wallpaper is pretty spicy this year. All their laptops are coming with this wallpaper. It looks really good. All right, Peter Spacey Roar for our first song. That actually was better than I anticipated. Okay, and last song is La La La, Deuce Williams.
I love you like la 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 la. I love you like la 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 la. I love you like la 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 la.
Okay, well the vocals were pretty good actually. So that means the mids are doing pretty good. I feel like the highs broke up the most. And there was very little bass. There was a little bit of bass, but there is not that strong a bass. It makes sense. I think we have two tweeters in this. Let me check the tech specs real quick. So right here, yeah, two 2-watt speakers. So the speakers are not, it's not a huge system. So they're just gonna be kind of like average-ish. I'd probably give them a rating. That was pretty good volume. I'm probably thinking like a 6 or maybe like a 6.5, somewhere in that ballpark for the rating for the speakers. There's definitely a lot better speakers in other more expensive laptops, but for an $1,100 price point, I feel like it was actually surprisingly good. It kind of surprised me. I thought they would be worse than that. We did see them when we took the bottom of the laptop off, and they were pretty large speakers for two 2 watts, two 2-watt speakers. So very nice. Let's go ahead. Let's see here. What else do we got to do? I'm going to just show you my hands typing on the keyboard so you can get an idea what that looks like, and using the touchpad a little bit. And then we're going to hop into some performance testing. So let me scooch a little to the side, zoom in a little bit. All right, so my hand is not accidentally touching the the touchpad at all. That's good. As far as using it to scroll, it seems to work pretty well for scrolling. The click feels good. The right click, it's a good size. Like this whole touchpad, it's a well implemented touchpad for this price point. I like it. All right, very nice. Let's go ahead and do some Cinebench R23. And we're gonna do a process lasso install real quick. I'm trying to do process lasso to make my testing as fair as possible. So process lasso is a utility you can use to basically make certain programs on your computer take the primary focus of your performance of the machine. So whenever Cinebench is running, the resources on the machine are going to try to focus on Cinebench and prioritize it above anything else. So just in case there's any background processes trying to do something on the system, the CPU is basically going to ignore those processes more often when you have process lasso, prioritizing your CPU performance. So we're going to set CPU priority always. We're going to do above normal. All right. So I'm not setting it to real time. If you want to maximize your scores, you probably would want to set it to like real time or something, but that's not what my goal is for today. All right. And I want to also mention I had to remove Norton Antivirus. Norton Antivirus was on this machine. And so if you want to use, you want to clear your laptop of junk, you're going to need to delete Norton Antivirus and then restart your machine. All right, so let's get HW info pulled up as well. You can do it in Task Manager, but it doesn't work as well. Process Lasso just works better. It's going to be more consistent. All right, so our Intel i7 12650H has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 P cores and 4 E cores. So 6 P cores that are double threaded for basically 6 P cores, 12 threads plus 4 E cores and 4 threads means that this is a 10 core 16 thread CPU. 10 cores 16 thread. Yep. And this is going to be interesting. Think about it. We're going to be benchmarking and testing this laptop. It has only one fan. How well can MSI cool this laptop with only one fan? And what kind of CPU performance can you get with only one active air-cooled fan, right? This is going to be interesting. This is going to be very interesting. All right, so here we go. All right, so single core, and we also, so let's go over MSI Center. This is the software that you're going to use to control this laptop. So this software is going to give you some basic stats on what's going on with your laptop right here. Inside of features, you click on that, and then you can go to gaming mode if you want. The primary area that you're actually going to use, though, is not this area. This area is pretty much useless. The user scenario is where you're going to want to go to change your modes in your laptop. You can do Smart Auto, which is going to use AI to try to match what you need with the system. I personally probably would never use that. I'd either be in extreme performance mode, balanced, silent, or super battery mode. So depending on what you're wanting to do, most of the time you're probably going to be in extreme performance mode, unless you're trying to be quiet or maximize your battery, in which case you'll either be in silent or super battery. Inside of the extreme performance mode, there's also additional settings called Cooler Boost. This is going to maximize your fans. Let's go ahead and see how loud this single fan is. So I'm holding the mic right next to the fans right now. Let me try turning them off again. So that's max fans right there. And this is how loud it sounds when you're about a foot away from the laptop. It's not that loud, but it's definitely very noticeable, I would say. It's kind of like probably in like the 55 to 56 decibel range of sound. It's a not quiet, but not too loud either fan noise. Okay, all right, here we go. We're gonna pop into Cinebench. Let's run our multi-core. We're gonna do it a couple of single runs first, and then we're gonna do a 10-minute test. All right, we've got, we'll reset. We're doing 3.6 gigahertz on the P cores, 3.2 gigahertz on the E cores. Our temps are actually staying really good at 72 and 80. Let's see if they stay good consistently. Our CPU package power is 77 watts. That's actually very good watts for a single fan unit. What? Okay. I'm kind of impressed with the amount of watts this thing's able to pull, at least through the CPU. Okay, that kind of took me by surprise. I was expecting more like 45 or 50 watts, but we're doing 75 watts consistently throughout this run. 77. But this i7 doesn't really have that many cores and threads compared to the new i9 processors. You know, 10 core, 16 thread is not that many. All right, so we got 13,871 for our first run. Let's go for a second run. That is very good. That's going to let you do video editing. Video rendering, no problem on this laptop. Though this display is not that great. So it's not really going to be very color accurate or very vibrant for video editing, Photoshop, stuff like that. But it would do the task just fine. 67 watts now, going through the CPU, down to 52 watts on the CPU. Interesting. I wonder what we're going to get for our overall wattage. Interesting. 55 watts now. It seems to be stabilizing at 55 watts for the long power limit. That's not bad. I was really thinking we were going to be throttling down to like 35 or 45 watts. And look at our temps now. Our temps are actually sitting pretty stable. 73 degrees on average, 80 degrees on the package, and our clock speeds. Let's check out our clock speeds. 3.2 gigahertz, 3.3 gigahertz, and 2.9 gigahertz. So now we're doing 11,887 for our second run. Let's do a third run and see what we get. I'm thinking we've reached stability now as far as performance goes. Ooh, did we just have a... Okay, no, we didn't have a crash. So Process Lasso can make things be a little funky. When you prioritize certain tasks, it can make the rest of Windows a little bit laggy, which is part of why I do it, though, anyway, because we want to make the rest of Windows not interfere with our test. So overall, very surprisingly better than expected CPU performance, if I'm being honest. And I'm curious, do we have any do we have any potential for increasing the performance on this laptop? Because these temperatures are very good. We could certainly raise the power limits up to like 65, 70 for the long power limit and still be well below thermal throttling. So you could definitely increase the performance of this laptop a bit higher with a little bit of tuning. So let's see what we get for our third run. 11,900. We'll do one more run. I'm pretty sure we've reached stable performance now at this point, right at 11.9K. For a budget laptop, budget CPU, I feel like that's very good out of the box performance. You know what's funny? What's funny is this laptop right now doing 55. It started at 83 watts at the highest. That was higher wattage pull than what the Alienware M16, which is a $2,600 laptop, did out of the box. That was limited down to 60 watts on the CPU. It was only doing like 50 degrees on the CPU too at the same time. So anyway, that's pretty impressive. Let's do a 10-minute test. How much is the Legion Pro 5 gonna cost? So the Legion Pro 5 is going to vary a lot. If you can get it on sale, you might be able to get it for, I don't know, $1,000 for a 3060, a 3070 Ti in the $1,400, $1,500 price point. Right now, it's $1,500. If you go to my laptop list, you can get a 3070 Ti. All right, so we got 11,800. Let's go ahead and give it a moment to breathe. And we're going to go ahead and start a 10-minute test. I'm tempted to try to raise the power limit on this guy. Would you guys want me to do a 10-minute test? Quick poll. Do you want me to do the 10-minute test before or after raising power limits? All right. Moa with the $100 SAR. Thank you so much for the super chat, my friend. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. After? Okay, so we're going to do a 10-minute test stock. And we're not going to do another 10-minute test after. We'll just do a few normal runs. If Intel XTU is unlocked, that's what we'll do. All right, so we're rocking our 10-minute test now. And we'll see what we get. Right now, looking at our initial power draw, we're doing 77 watts. And let me also go ahead and reset our mins, max, and averages so we can get our true averages. You could definitely probably do 80 watts of continuous throughput on the CPU in this MSI Cyborg, which I was absolutely not expecting. And if you could undervolt this guy at the same time, I think you could probably push 14 to 15K consistently in Cinebench R23, which is, I think, very impressive for the $1,100 price point, or at least it's pretty dang good. All right, let's see here. Checking chat, reading through chat. Avnesh says, love from India, Alienware M16 4070 for $19.99 or Asus Strix G16 4060 for $1,400. Ooh, interesting. So Alienware M16, that's going to have a really nice, like 370, 100%, 370 nits, QHD, 100% DCI-P3 color gamut display, right? So it's going to have a really nice QHD display. Now that Strix G16 4060 for $1,400, that's going to be a full HD display, right? It's not a QHD display. So that's going to be a huge difference between those two. The Strix G16 and the Alienware M16 should both go to 140 watts, no problem. I'm wondering if the performance of the CPU is going to be different. What CPU models are in those two? Because if one of them has significantly better CPU, that would also heavily sway the question one way or the other. So the Strix G16 is 1200p, so it's a full HD plus display. Yeah, it should be that anyway. So between those two, that's a big jump in price. Both are the same i7. They both have Windows Hello. The Alienware M16 is going to have way better ports than the Strix G16. Way better ports. It's got a full-size SD card slot, more ports overall, better display. You're going to have better RGB effects with the Alienware M16. So there you go. You got to get your RGB, man. No, between those two, I would say that the package is pretty compelling for the upgrade to the Alienware M16 if you're willing to deal with crappier software. All right. The Alienware M16 has a metal top and bottom lid, where the Zephyrus, or the Strix G16 has only a metal top lid. And so I say the build quality is a bit better on the Alienware M16. The performance between those two is going to be in a similar ballpark in terms of wattage. They both should go to 140 watts on the GPU. The 4070 definitely would be better performance as well. So I think you're getting an overall better upgrade with the Alienware. But the Strix G16 is not necessarily a bad option either, because I'm sure it's a decent display. No Windows Hello. Yeah, I mean, if it was my money, I would go the Alienware route, because I feel like you would get a better bang for the buck, especially with the more colorful display, higher resolution display. It's like if you go with the 4070 QHD, you're getting, not only are you getting Windows Hello, you're getting a much higher color gamut display, higher resolution display, better ports, metal build quality on the top and bottom, and more rigid chassis. So between those two, I'd probably go with that. I'd probably go with the Alienware. But that's assuming, the caveat there is if you're willing to deal with the Alienware software crappiness, right? Because Alienware software has been awful. When I did it a month ago, I've got my Alienware M16 right there. I want to test it. If Alienware has not fixed the software in the M16, then I'm probably gonna end up returning it. All right, I'm not even gonna put it in my buyback program. I'm just gonna return it. So, because I'm not gonna be, it's gonna be hard to recommend it if the software is not better, then the average user is just not gonna want to deal with all the crappy software bugs, right? So that's why the Alienware is I guess a cautious recommendation for me now. Like, it's not necessarily a terrible option. It's just you got to be willing to deal with crappy software updates that sometimes don't apply or like mess up a lot more consistently, interrupt your daily experience with the laptop sometimes. Yeah. So Tyver says, I can't find the Strix G18 4060, just 4070. Do you think that it'll not come with a 4060? I'm not sure about the Strix G18. I don't think we've seen the G18 version with a 4060 yet. I think we have a 4070 option for 1800. Is that what it is? I have to double check the list. Let's pop over to the list and do some looking around real quick while we're waiting for this benchmark to wrap up. So here we go. So here's the laptop list. We've got 3.5 minutes left on the benchmark. If I go over to the live one, I can sort and filter. So I'll just go in here. I'll type in Strix. All right, so here's all the Strix laptops that are currently for sale. And we've got the Strix G17 with a Ryzen 9 7945HX with a 4060. That's pretty juicy. That's very good CPU performance for the money. Probably the best CPU performance you're going to buy for the money. $17.99. This guy looks awesome. Especially, it's a nice display. But it's only a 4060, right? So you're not getting as much GPU juice in that guy. But it still should be very compelling, I think, purchase. Strix G16 with a 4070... Only a full HD 165 hertz display on this Strix G16, but it's $19.99. Yeah, this is the Strix you're talking about that we were talking about earlier that we're comparing with the Alienware M16. Yeah, the main downside to this one is it's not a QHD display, but it's still a nice display. and it's a 4060. I mean, this is, I think, is still a pretty good option. No Windows Hello on here, but still a very good option all around, I think, at that price point. Better performance than what you're going to get in the Zephyrus lineup at that price point for sure, because of the higher power limits. But it's not going to be as portable as the Zephyrus, and won't have as good as speakers as the Zephyrus either. Because the Zephyrus laptops have a 6-speaker setup in the Strix G16 Zephyrus lineup. So looking at, let's just do G18 specifically. Wait, is there only one G18 option right now? I thought there was a Strix G18. Yes. Well, there's only one Strix G18 option right now on here. I thought we had a 4070 option on the list. That's interesting. Strix G18. Yeah, it looks like we only have one option on here. We probably got a, I guess this is G17 options is what I was thinking of. But this one looks interesting. The Ryzen 9. It's got a Ryzen 9 7845HX with an RTX 4070. $1899, only a full HD 144 hertz display. Huh. But this laptop is less cores than the Ryzen 9 version, so maybe you're going to get better battery life. The display being only full HD is kind of a deal breaker for me on value on that one, though. So, yeah, all right, so it looks like we're down to less than a minute left. Let's evaluate what we got on our MSI Cyborg here. So our core clocks have averaged 3.05 on the P cores, 2.8 on most of the E cores. Our average core temp is 71 and 76 on the package. So very, very good temps. 55 watts on average to the CPU is a pretty good amount of wattage for a single fan setup. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. I think this is going to be an overall surprisingly good CPU performance for the money machine, especially if we can use Intel XDU to boost the performance, which let's go ahead and try that once this test is done. We're not going to do another 10-minute test, but we'll, if we can modify our power limits in Intel XTU, then we're going to at least do a few more runs and see what kind of power, if the power limits are going to be sustainable or not. Moa asks, is it worth buying the Asus Z13 with XG Mobile 4090? Or a SCAR 18 with the RTX 4090. So the biggest difference with the XG Mobile is that you then have to, basically that 4090 is not directly connected to the motherboard. It has to go through the eGPU express lane connection. And it's not going to be quite as good a throughput as if it was directly connected to the motherboard. So in CPU bound games especially, you're going to notice the performance difference. Wow. We actually scored a little bit higher than what we did in our single runs. We got 12,008. Sorry, 12,008 for our 10-minute test. That is pretty dang good. Let's go ahead and try installing Intel XTU and seeing what happens. We should have Intel XTU in this. I guess we don't have it. We might have to download it. Oh, it should be on here. There it is. Okay, so let me put this into my laptop folder. Delete that. Okay. All right, so we're installing this. This will just take a minute to install. We'll reboot it, and then we'll see if Intel XTU can apply power limits to this laptop to increase our performance or not. I prefer it when manufacturers let us take control of our own laptops, though. MSI oftentimes only lets you do that in the BIOS. But so maybe you can modify this in the BIOS too, but we'll find out. Okay, so we were talking about the XG Mobile with the Asus Z13. So the other thing to keep in mind with that Asus Z13 is even if you're hooked up to the external eGPU, in some of the games like Dead Space, you're going to be more limited because of your CPU performance. All right, so basically, because you're dealing with a lower TDP on your CPU, and then potentially, a lower performance CPU part in the Z13. That's going to be another potential bottleneck in some games. In general, though, in the vast majority of games, you should see some really great performance from the Flow Z13. And in some games, you're probably going to be very close to the performance of the Scar 18 with the Z13 with an XG Mobile. But it's just going to really vary from game to game, because some games I'm anticipating you're going to be like 20-30% slower than the Scar 18. And then other games you're going to basically be matching it, right? So looks like our audio driver updated and wants us to restart. So we'll restart one more time. Yeah, Typer says, I love the Strix G screen, but want the 18-inch one. The 4060 is enough for me if I have a great price. I could go for the 4080 if it goes cheaper than $2,500. Gotcha. Well, the most important thing you should know about the Strix G18 is that the 4080 versus the 4070, the 4080 is a huge performance upgrade. Like it's a big performance upgrade, and it may be worth saving your money up to get all the way to that 4080 price point. I know the HP Omen is probably the cheapest RTX 4080 right now. I think it comes in at $23.99. So, all right. So we got to agree again to the MSI thing. It's doing an update. Cool. All right. Let's see if Intel XTU is going to let us modify any changes. Advanced view, benchmark, advanced tuning. We're going to agree and not show. Okay, so it looks like everything's locked down except our power limits. So no undervolting. I wonder if our power limits will apply. Let's try raising the power limit up all the way to 81. And I'll raise our power boost window up to 128 as well. Let's see if this applies in our Cinebench runs. Let's go HW info. Get that open first. And then let's go Cinebench R23. Clark Kent says, I would like to see the Acer Predator Helios 300 Spatial Labs edition with that 3D screen. I did film some hands-on videos with CES with that laptop. I just never got around to editing it. I can tell you right now, it was awesome. Using the 3D display with Spatial Labs was really sweet. It looks like you're like looking through a window into another 3D space instead of just at like a flat painting. And it's definitely something I can recommend, at least for like if you're primarily like a single player type of gamer. It's obviously not going to help people in esports type games. It'd be way harder to play esports games with that display. But all right, so let's take a look at our power limits. We're doing 81 watts, just like we said, or just, well, now it's doing 84 watts, 80.2 watts, 84 watts. What? Okay. All right, we're getting higher temps. Look at, we're doing 90 degrees on the package, 83 on the core. That's still within reasonable temps. 81 watts on the CPU still. Let's see if this holds, see if this maintains. Pretty interesting. Am I going to test the Acer Predator Helios 16? I would really like to. I just have to be able to order it, and it has to be available for sale in the United States, basically. So we're going to want to wait basically like 2 to 3 minutes and see if see what our temps and package power and all of that stabilizes at. All right. It's also interesting to note that we did not have to disable core isolation to get Intel XTU to work. Normally we do, which is, right? That's a little interesting that we didn't have to do that. Kind of cool. I wonder if it's because virtualization is automatically disabled or something on this laptop. I don't know. So far, our wattage is staying in the 80 watts range, which is phenomenal. I just reset our averages just now. We're 2 minutes in now. This is really promising. Very promising. It really shows you that this laptop has got some CPU performance chops that I was not anticipating. I really like, especially given a single fan design, I was not anticipating that it'd be able to do 80 watts of power to the CPU. So I guess chalk one up to a surprised reviewer there. We are getting to thermal throttling levels now on the CPU, but our wattage is still staying nice and steady, very close to 80, occasionally dipping down just a little bit, right? We're doing good though. So we're 3 minutes in. Did we drop in wattage yet? Oh, looks like we dropped in wattage. Our package power has finally reduced down 48 watts. So interesting. That's even lower. All right, that's even lower than what we had in the previous test before we changed Intel XTU. So what that means is most likely the BIOS either had an emergency, like this wattage is too hot too long and it like overrode our wattages, or our power boost window ran out and now we're into the long power limit, which is, and it didn't override. It may have just taken our long CPU power limit and utilized the short limit for a longer boost window. That's what my guess is as far as what happened here. And overall, I'm trying to get Intel XTU to open up. It's like not wanting to come out of hiding right now. I guess we'll reopen it. Come on out. Yeah, Intel XTU is not having a good time right now. We're gonna end Intel XTU service, so hopefully we can reopen it. Well, we just ended the laptop's life. That's it, guys. That's it for the stream. Just kidding. I'm pretty sure we just crashed the laptop because I ended that service. That's whatever. It'll be back up and running in no time. Slick Rounder says, you can't do a traditional undervolt because it's an H part. Traditionally, basically, what happens is with the H parts, Intel has kind of locked down the undervolting potential, and they're only letting HX and HK parts be undervolted these days, which kind of sucks, but yeah. All right, so regarding Intel XTU, we definitely saw higher levels of performance. Without a doubt, we saw higher levels of performance. The interesting part to me is that it appears... MSI Center keeps updating every time we load in. So what it appears is the Turbo Boost power time window, this increased. So you can use Intel XTU to boost the power time window to last longer, which, I mean, that is going to speed up your CPU performance quite noticeably, all right? But the thing is, well, look at this. Our power boost window is set to 120 right now. What? I don't think the CPU would even try to draw that high of wattage, but anyway, so the key thing is we were able to increase our performance but not for very long. All right, let's move into some game testing now. It's time to see how this RTX, it's time to see how this RTX 4060 performs. Got to make sure our afterburner is fully set up correctly. I'm not sure if it's been tuned. Monitor. GPU 1. All right. Yeah, looks like I already set this up, but we need to do that and that. All right. Very good. We are in extreme performance mode on the MSI Center. And we've got a lot of games. I've got a bunch of games installed on my external SSD instead of the internal 512 gig SSD. So just know that in our load times might take a little longer because of that. All right, but we're gonna try testing at least 10 games today with this RTX 4060. So we're gonna really put it through the ringer and see what kind of performance we get. Lucas says, just wanted to drop in and say thank you for the detailed reviews. Help me on something I had no knowledge of and help me make an easy decision on how to spend my money. Greetings from Austria. I have been to Austria briefly. When I was, we drove through the border. We landed in Austria and then drove to Poland, I think, and Slovakia. Yeah, but I was very briefly in Austria. So, okay. Devin says 90 degrees Celsius. Cool. So, I mean, this Intel chip is designed to go up to 90 degrees. I'm not concerned about 90 degrees at all. And the fact that it's not hitting that 90 degree mark hard. Like, it's not like throttling hard when it hits it. It's like, it's bouncing off the 90 degree mark. And only after I really raised the power limit above what its stock power limit was supposed to be. All right, so we need to get into Riva Tuner. We need to make our font size a bit bigger. All right. So, Cyberpunk 2077 with a 45 watt RTX 4060. Can you hear those speakers? Those speakers are pretty dang loud. All right, those speakers are... I'm actually surprised. The speakers are pretty loud. The fan noise is actually pretty loud too, though. Considering this is only a 4060 with one fan. Though the fan, I'm also on the side of the laptop where the fan is, so I guess it kind of makes sense. All right, can we run Cyberpunk on max settings? We're gonna find out. All right, so we're on ray tracing on ultra. Everything's on the highest preset right now. There's a few more things you could theoretically turn on to a little bit higher, but we're on the highest preset that they offer. And we're gonna run benchmark and find out. We're about to find out about this 4060, all right? Am I gonna do Timespy? Yes, Mitchell, we're doing Timespy, but it's gonna be at the end. Definitely gonna be interesting to see how Timespy does. Murph, we're going to test this exactly how someone would actually want to play this game, right? They're going to want to probably play with frame gen, DLSS on quality, settings on ultra. Our 1% lows are struggling a bit right there. Did you see we're only like doing 10 FPS for our 1% lows there? But our average FPS is actually pretty good. Average FPS is actually very good. Good enough to play. Getting 54 FPS on average right now. Oh, we got some stutters. I wonder what's causing our stutters to happen. Notice our GPU wattage is dropping occasionally down to 27 watts, okay? Right now, we also do not have GPU temperature or usage. So we might have to use HW info to fill in that data on our overlay, which I'm gonna do that as soon as this is done. Frame generation is enabled. It's interesting. These stutters, we're definitely getting some stutters right now. I wonder what's going on with that though. Super interesting. All right, so we averaged 57 FPS, but we had a number of stutters, which is not good. I'm gonna exit process lasso. I'm gonna use this. I wanna try balanced mode on the GPU. I wanna see how that affects our power limits in this same test. Because what I feel like what's happening is like maybe the CPU is drawing too much wattage right now. And it ends up choking the GPU out of its wattage. Like look at our CPU doing 60 watts while the GPU is only doing 15. So let's see now what we get in balanced mode. And I gotta say right now the fan is very quiet. 8 gigs of RAM is probably a hugely limiting factor. In Cyberpunk, it can be a limiting factor, I think, especially in busier areas, but we'll see. All right. Balanced mode now. Notice our wattage on our GPU is a bit higher. We're doing 39. Our problem, I think, was our CPU was taking too much juice. And I'm thinking that might be my fault because I went into Intel XDU and was playing with power limit settings. And that may have messed something up with the BIOS, causing our stutter to happen. All right, so that could be my own problem. It's a shame we're not seeing 45 watts on the GPU. Our performance is so much better now, right? We're not stuttering. We're getting smooth gameplay with 52 for our 1% lows is excellent. Does this GPU boost to 60 when it's a 45 watt 4060? No, I believe it maximum boost I think is 45. I gotta say, considering we're in ultra settings, this is pretty dang good performance. Giving us very good performance overall, considering ultra settings. 72 FPS on average. Let me try setting us back to extreme performance. Now, obviously, this, I think, is a lower performance than what we saw on the 4060 in the Gigabyte G5. That has a 75 watt TDP limit. And I'm curious to see what did we, I think we got 86 FPS, I think, in this same test versus the Gigabyte G6. I should double check that number. But I'm curious to see, because that's 75 watts versus 45 watts, only giving us about 10 FPS difference. Interesting. All right, so if we were to try this, all right, let's just try to optimize for low settings with DLSS and frame gen. Well, DLSS on quality, frame generation on, all right, with low settings. What are we getting if we optimize our gameplay to try to get like a smooth frame rate? Can we get over 100 FPS in Cyberpunk with this game? I'm curious. If we can get over 100, that would be phenomenal. 120 so far. Wow. That's actually pretty surprising. Like, I'm not saying you should buy this laptop. I definitely still think there are some other laptops that are pretty good options out there, but that's a really great frame rate in Cyberpunk if you wanted to play this game and you're not that picky about being on low versus ultra settings. You know, some gamers, you know, they'd prefer to play at higher frame rates rather than low, higher frame rates with low settings versus ultra settings and lower frame rates. And in this game, I would say in Cyberpunk, you'd really want to hit like 90 FPS would be my target. So I'd probably tune this thing to be somewhere in like the middle ground of settings. Mashhood, thanks so much with the €2 donation. I appreciate that. Slick Runner says, yeah, increased CPU power is not a good idea for this. Now we know though. Yeah, so, wow, 125 FPS for this test. I think that's 39 for our low, or our min FPS. But our 1% lows were higher than that, actually. I mean, this will play Cyberpunk no problem. Depending on how you want to tune it, you can definitely get some good frame rates going, all right? So let's go into Dead Space next. Dead Space is a very interesting game because it's very CPU heavy, all right? Very CPU heavy means that it wants to draw a lot of power from the CPU. And if you don't have a good enough CPU, that may bottleneck your performance for your GPU. So we'll have to see. Wake up, Samurai. We got a city to burn. Try Hogwarts Legacies with the 8 gig of RAM. Yeah, Nathan, we're gonna try Hogwarts Legacy, and that's definitely one of the games we're gonna try today. But the most important difference between this laptop and the Gigabyte G5 when it comes to RAM is that this is DDR5 8 gigs. The DDR4 in the Gigabyte G5 is gonna struggle more because it's only single channel, and DDR5 is supposed to perform better in single channel mode. So we'll have to see. It might actually perform better than expected in Hogwarts, but we'll see. Could you hold an additional 8 gigs of RAM stick so you could test these low-price laptops to show potential? So, Mr. Alexander, I would love to do that, actually. But I definitely want to test it out of the box first. But maybe in the same live stream in the future, I will, like, test 10 games and then flip the laptop over, grab an 8 gig stick, throw it in here so we'd have, like, you know, parity. And then you could see the performance increase in games like Hogwarts in the middle of the live stream. I would like to do that. That would be good. 8 gigs is going to be a massive bottleneck. Yeah, just in day-to-day Windows usage, 8 gigs is not great. This is DDR5. That's correct, your PC Prime. We've got DDR5, 8 gigs of DDR5, 4800 Samsung RAM. Do you know if you get the Aura 17X? Yeah, the Aura 17X is coming. It has liquid metal or just regular paste? I think it just has regular paste. Is the RAM dual rank? You'd have to go back to the earlier part of the live stream and check that. We did grab the RAM stick and I showed it to the stream. I don't remember off the top of my head. Thankfully, they didn't solder the RAM on this. Yeah, it is 2 SODIMM slots. You can upgrade it. It has 1 8 gig stick with 1 empty SODIMM slot. This is taking a while to load into Dead Space. Dead Space usually takes a while to boot up, though. I'm trying to think of do I have any DDR5 4800 RAM sticks that are 8 gigs right now in these laptops that I have? I think the Strix G18 has that RAM in it. I could grab one of those sticks and put it in there to match it. I think it's a Samsung RAM too. I'd have to double check the live stream though. DDR5 is not limiting as DDR4. I think this is worth testing out of the box. Yeah, we're going to test it out of the box and see if it has better performance. So, Nathan says, I hate when laptop makers sell an 8 gig RAM laptop and then they solder the RAM so you can't even upgrade it. Yeah, that would only mainly happen in like things like Ultrabooks or super thin and light laptops. I don't think you're going to really see that happen very often in a laptop like this. Maybe in a thin and light, you know, like the Zephyrus G14, I think had 8 gigs soldered in the past. I think it still does, right? The G14 and G15 both have 8 gigs soldered, but one stick is upgradable. All right, so checking our options. We're on ultra settings. DLSS is on quality. Full HD, 144 hertz. All of that's correct. Let's make sure ultra settings. All right, so let's see what we get. I just refreshed our FPS counter. We'll refresh it again in a little bit. Getting a little bit of low on the 1% lows, but this is still playable, especially given that it's kind of a slower single player game. Though, I mean, when you're getting freaked out by crazy monsters coming at you in Dead Space. I don't know. It'd be a bit interesting. Okay, I also realized that my camera, I probably should down expose on my camera a little bit because it probably looks a little bit easier to see the image on the laptop now. But that should be pretty good. So we're getting around the 60 FPS range on all ultra settings. Surprisingly pretty good FPS, at least in terms of like, you want a laptop where you get playable frame rates and the latest titles on the highest settings. We're still getting that, right? We're still getting that. We're getting a little stutter there. It was definitely a stutter at that point. All right, so we're ready to do our test. Look at our wattage right now. Our CPU is drawing 40 watts of power, 45. Our GPU is drawing less wattage below our cap at only 29 watts. Interesting, right? Like I said, this is a very CPU-focused game. Also, while we're at the topic of CPU-focused games, let's just double-check inside of our monitoring software. We don't have GPU 1 temps anywhere in here. Yeah, we don't have any GPU temps or GPU utilization, so let's open up HW info. And let's get GPU utilization and GPU temps up on the overlay. GPU. We're gonna do our GPU temperature. We're gonna add this to our overlay. And then we're also gonna do GPU core load. And we're gonna add this to our overlay as well. All right, so now when we hop back in, here's our overlays. So we've got our GPU core temp and our GPU utilization. So interestingly enough, we're 100% GPU utilized, only at 28 watts. Interesting, very interesting. All right, so here we go. We're walking. Wildfire asks, do you know what the root cause of delayed typing could be? I don't know how to explain. Sometimes in typing or cursor skips back as though the letters weren't there. It happens on the i9 13900H and 13900HX. It could be that your CPU is tied up, or maybe you're maxing all of your RAM usage. Both of those are possibilities. Okay, so 58 FPS with 19 FPS for our low. Now, still very playable. If we were to try to optimize our settings here, you know, we were to go to let's do DLSS on quality, but we'll just do low settings for our settings. I don't know, do we need to reset? It's taking a little bit to load. What kind of FPS do we get going to low? Huh. The game looks exactly the same, it seems like, and our FPS is still the same. Ultra to low settings doesn't make a difference because we're CPU bound in this game. Isn't that interesting? CPU bound without a doubt, all right? The game looks so similar on low settings and ultra settings. Gorgeous game still, either way, though. Very, very impressive. It's just, I don't know how it necessarily stacks up against the competition yet when you do comparison numbers and everything, but I'm just impressed that this laptop's able to play all the games at such a low wattage to the GPU, okay? Such a low wattage. It reminds me of the Steam Deck. Like, the Steam Deck is only doing like 25 watts for the whole system, and it's still putting out playable frame rates somehow. I'm just like, how is this possible? and yet we're only doing 30 watts in dead space, and we're still putting out playable frame rates on ultra settings. I'm just like, okay, I guess this is how things are now. What CPU is this? We have an i7 12650H in this laptop. It is a 6 performance core, 4 efficiency core, so 10 core, 16 thread CPU. Mr. Alexander says, I'm truly wondering why 4060 only has the 5500 megahertz VRAM speed here. Normally that's for the 4080, 3050. 3050 Ti had 56 and 700. I don't know, Mr. Alexander, that's interesting. Mr. Alexander says, DLSS performance and general settings high is what I do on my old 3050 laptop most of the time, and it reaches 60 plus. Yeah. Steam Deck has 35 boost and then lowers to 28. Oh, interesting, after a minute or two. In my testing, I saw 25 at the high end, but maybe there's ways to make a boost higher. I was pretty impressed with the Steam Deck overall because a lot of the games at that ultra low resolution was so CPU bound that my laptop with the 3050 Ti was actually only outperforming it by a little bit in most of the games because the CPU was only just a little bit better. And we need to be full screen. Right now we're not in full screen for some reason. We got to restart anyway to go into DX12. The new Ryzen Phoenix APU is going to be the most efficient ever. It's going to be so interesting, Nathan, what the Steam Deck 2.0 is going to be like. Because that generation of technology, like it's kind of like the first iteration, and then usually like the second and third iterations are just so much better. So I'm anticipating like Steam Deck 2.0 might even have like a 90 or 120 hertz display, and we're actually able to do higher levels of FPS performance in most of the games in a handheld. It would be so cool to see it. That was probably my biggest complaint, or my biggest complaint in general about the Steam Deck, is that almost all of the games, they're playable, but they're not high FPS, and it's not a high resolution or a high refresh rate display. So you compare that versus a gaming laptop, and it's just like it's not really even very comparable, you know. So it looks like we have to restart the game one more time as we get all of the settings correctly set up in Dying Light 2. Phoenix is currently delayed till April. Interesting. The AMD chip in the Steam Decks is a beast. Yes, yeah, it's interesting. And I just can't wait to the second and third iterations of that. What would you recommend around the $2,000 mark? So that's where it's really tricky, Henry, because right around the $2,000 mark, you start getting options that are really good in the RTX 3000 series, because you get 3080 Ti laptops around the $2,000 mark that could be compelling, especially if they come with really good displays and good build quality. But if you're looking for the next generation, like you're probably looking at a 4070 if you're looking at a $2,000 mark. That's the weird part. Like, I feel like the value 4070s are more like the best 4070s are more around the $1,600 to $1,800 price point if you want a good display and good build quality. And if you want a 4080, it's a massive performance jump. So like $2,000 is not really a price segment that I would recommend most people to buy at right now. But I would say, like, if you can save a little bit more, go for a $2,400 Omen 17 or a $2,500 Strix G18. Because then the value in the 4080 laptop, it's a huge performance gap between a 4070 and a 4080. So there's just like kind of this big gap. You either go for a higher value 4070 priced $1,800 or less, or you go for a 4060, $1,400 or something, you know, or you save up and you jump the gap all the way to the 4080. That's kind of my thoughts on the value right now. A Legion Pro 7 is up there too, but they cost quite a bit more, I think, like $2,700. You also have the Alienware M16 too, if you want a little bit more rigid build. That's an option. All right, so here we are. Let's take a look at what we got. So we got 38 watts, 35 watts to the GPU, a good amount of wattage to the CPU, 35 watts. Our FPS on all ultra settings with ray tracing enabled, we're doing 66 FPS. That's going to be very playable. Of course, our 1% lows are low as it loads between the different scenes. Our RAM is doing not quite maxing our 8 gigs of RAM right now, which is good. So, there, like I said, there are quite a few games out there that are not going to need more than 8 gigs of RAM, but there are going to be some that will probably really struggle, if they don't have 8 gigs. So I'm very curious to see how Hogwarts does still. What's this game? This is called Dying Light 2. It's a zombie survival single-player story game. And I'm about 3 to 4 hours into it. And it's a pretty awesome game so far. Is ray tracing on? Yes, we have ray tracing enabled right now. So if you were to disable ray tracing, if you were to set the settings to low, you should be able to pump some really high FPS through this. Dying Light 2 is a masterpiece. It's especially the opening intros and how it's handled. It's so masterfully done at the start, at least. So right now it's doing 73 FPS here on all ultra settings with ray tracing enabled, DLSS on quality, and frame generation enabled. So again, very playable frame rate at 74 FPS. Know that the way that counts the FPS is wrong in Dying Light 2. So CPU bottleneck. Yeah, so a lot of the games you're going to find being CPU bottlenecked if you're using ray tracing and DLSS, because it does put heavier CPU utilization on the game, right? So let's go ahead and hop into CSGO. So this is an esports title. Our goal is to get at least 144 FPS minimum. But really, anyone that's going to play CSGO very seriously is probably going to want like a 240 hertz display. So I'm anticipating CSGO players with this laptop would probably be hooking up the HDMI 2.1 to an external monitor for like a full HD 240 hertz display for your esports games. And that would also work really well for games like Valorant, League of Legends, Dota. This laptop should be able to handle that gameplay just fine. Are we testing 3D Mark? Yes, we are testing 3D Mark, but it'll be after we test a bunch more games. We got at least 5 or 6 more games we're going to test today. Timo says, do you think the Legion 5 Pro with the 4060 is better than the last year model? I think you mean, is it a better value right now? And I'd have to see the price points and the exact specs, what you're getting with each one to know better. It's hard for me to just say yes or no. I need to get more, I need to know what the CPU, the GPU, the display is. Those 3 things at least. But yeah. Vitamin K says, Asus has a 3070 Ti, 8 gigs of DDR6, 3080, 8 gigs DDR6, and Zephyrus. I think the 3070 Ti has more power in the Strix model than the Zephyrus in the 3070 Ti maybe. Yeah, sometimes a 3070 Ti with a high TDP limit can outperform a 3080 for sure with a low TDP. So yeah, I would not be surprised at all if that is the case. All right, so we're doing developer console, video, full screen, apply, and we got to enable our net graph. All right. $4090 desktop is absolutely worth it over a 4080 desktop. I'm not sure. Tariq says, hey man, any suggestion about a Legion 5 2022 with a 3070 Ti, 32 gigs of RAM? Is it worth $1,700? Huh. I'd have to know what the SSD size and what display you're getting. If you're getting a QHD display that's 500 nits and like a 2 terabyte SSD, then it's probably worth $1,700. It's at least a decent, pretty good deal at that price point. Wouldn't say necessarily an amazing deal. All right, so in CSGO right now, we're doing 300, 400, 300, 400 FPS right there. I'm assuming you guys can see that. Let me double check you guys can see it. Yeah, you can. All right, so very good performance right now in CSGO. Let's see what our 1% lows look like going through the smoke. It's got a 2 terabyte. Okay, then yeah, I would say that's a pretty good value, Tariq. Mr. Alexander, the new 4060 max wattage basically performs like an old 3080 regarding laptops. Interesting. Yeah, it's kind of at least pretty similar ballpark. All right, looking at our FPS, we're doing 80, 70, 60. Went down to about 60, 70 FPS in the smoke. So that's not amazing, but it's actually not that bad considering what this laptop is. All right. Frank says, because about, I mean, do you have another question? Okay. About to buy the Blade 18. Just curious if I should go with a 4080 or 4090. So, Frank, the difference in performance between a 4080 and a 4090, I'm anticipating to be about 15%. If the price increases more than 15% relative to the performance, then it's not necessarily the best bang for the buck. It's kind of the way I think about it. But if you have the money and you want to future-proof for longer, spending the extra money on a 4090 will help you future-proof for longer. And the 4090 in that does give you a good amount of value, at least a 15% value in performance, most likely. Okay, so Uger, welcome to being a member. Congratulations, you're in the cool club now. Thank you so much for the support. You become a member for $5 a month. You also get a cool emoji. Let me see if how do I do this? Here, boom. You can do this emoji now. Congratulations. It's my face making a silly face because you're a member. All right, so 288 FPS in CSGO. That's fantastic. So that means that you're going to be able to play this laptop and get close to 240 FPS in CSGO on an external monitor. Let's try out Elden Ring. Let's see if we can get maximum FPS at 60. Jeff says, this Cyborg is not really worth than the Gigabyte G5. I'm going to do a side-by-side stream with the Gigabyte G5 and the Cyborg 15. So be sure to subscribe if you want to see the side-by-side performance comparison. We'll try like 10 games side-by-side. And we'll see what kind of performance we get with both laptops. Intel and AMD need to make a RTX 4080, 4090 competitor. Oh, you mean like from a graphics card perspective? That NVIDIA's just got... NVIDIA's just got Intel and AMD dominated in terms of the performance, I think. All right, so let's hop into our settings. It looks like are we running on the integrated GPU right now? Is that what's happening? Because right now our FPS is only 8. Our NVIDIA GPU is not being engaged. Looks like we have loaded into the incorrect GPU in Windows. We want to probably reset this back. Right now we're on quality settings high. All right, how do I go back? Q? All right. We're going to quit the game. So we're going to go into our Windows settings for graphics. We're going to go to Elden Ring. We're going to set an RTX 3060 as the desired GPU. If you're the kind of person to get FOMO, fear of missing out, just buy the top end and then forget it. Yeah, if you buy the top end and then you just forget about it, you never check a tech review, you don't look at anything, I don't know, you don't want to be following my channel, that's for sure. Because as soon as I see high levels of performance, I'm like, ooh, I gotta have. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, let's try loading into the game. See if it loads onto the NVIDIA GPU. I don't think it's gonna load though correctly. So, and then you just enjoy the laptop, right? Whatever laptop you bought, you just enjoy that laptop, and you live in the sand for 4 to 5 years, or as soon as your laptop breaks, then you come back out and you check out my channel again, and you get super involved for like a month or two as you investigate what to buy. So we are still not getting everything. Still not loading. This is not worth our time right now. Sorry, people, we're not gonna be able to test Elden Ring. Windows hasn't locked up, but it looks like Elden Ring is not liking us right now, so probably a driver issue, most likely. Blade 18 with 4080 is 3,800. 4090 is 4,500, so it's a $700 increase. I think that's like a toss-up then, whether you think it's worth it or not. It's really up to you. Clark says, I have resisted buying while drooling for years. Man, you have got incredible resilience. You've got incredible resilience. Game security violation detected. Oh no, did we just get banned? I'm gonna go for a full system restart. Why does Elden Ring concerned about banning people anyway? I think it must have detected that we had Afterburner running and it didn't like that. See, I personally prefer to upgrade every major generation. So like I'll upgrade on like the 3000, like the 3080, then I'll upgrade on the 4080, I upgraded on the 2080, the 1080. I rarely upgrade on the TI series. But it all depends on your timing, I guess, on when you actually bought your last laptop. Okay, so let's go into Steam again. Make sure Afterburner's loaded. All right, very good. And I gotta say, this is pretty responsive for only having 8 gigs of RAM. Like a lot of the systems I've used that only have 8 gigs of RAM, they're just not as responsive. I'm like, what the heck? It like takes a little longer to click or open stuff, like on the Gigabyte G5. But maybe because we have DDR5 in this system, we're just getting more responsive overall experience. All right, let's see if we can go into God of War. What is the difference between the TI series and the regular RTX series? So TI is usually just every other year they release a TI. So it'll be like 3080 in 2020, and then 2021 was the year they released the 3080 Ti. It's basically NVIDIA's way of trying to get more money from the same generation. And then every 2 years, they release a major upgrade. So they go from 3080 Ti 1 year later, and then 3080 Ti to the 4000 series after 2 years. So each generational gap is 2 years, and then there's a 1 year gap between the Ti and the regular GPU. And so right now, I'm anticipating the 3080 I'm anticipating the 4080, 4090 Ti versions to come out next year in January. If NVIDIA continues doing what they're doing. All right, so we're on ultra settings, 1080p. We're all set to continue. Let's hop into it. Britt Allen says, I upgrade every other generation. So that would be every 4 years. I think that's a pretty good methodology for getting a lot of bang for the buck. All right, so here we are. And we're in ultra settings. Interesting. Our CPU is being pretty heavily utilized again. So right now we're doing 40 FPS right here. I'm just going to Alt Tab. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to try balance mode. All right. And let's see what FPS we get now. It's still the same. Wow, and the fans are so quiet now. Looks like we also got to open HW info to get our overlay back with our GPU temperatures and usage. So there's our GPU temperature and our GPU utilization. Wow, I gotta say, balanced mode is giving us better performance. Look at this. So we were getting 40 FPS before, but our CPU is pulling higher wattage. All right, our CPU is pulling 40 watts, and that was sucking wattage away from our GPU. And now that we've switched over to balanced mode, we're actually getting better performance, 10% higher performance at 44 FPS, 45, 44, 43. So interesting. So extreme performance may not be the way to go. I don't know. Let's try extreme performance again. It also might be because of Intel XTU messing with things. I don't know. Let's see. We're in extreme performance. Notice now we're doing 40 watts on the CPU, 32 instead of 40. And our FPS is 4 less. So you might actually get better performance in GPU-bound games if you're utilizing balanced mode instead of extreme performance. Extreme performance seems to favor CPU. Seems to weight the CPU towards, it seems to weigh the wattage towards the CPU utilization. So let's test it in balanced mode, because we're getting higher performance in balanced mode. All right. So here we go. We're walking. So this is some pretty dang good FPS for ultra settings. We had a stutter there, dropping our 1% lows down to 12.
What did you find? Tracks. Not deer. I'll keep looking.
Okay, so we ended up with 47 FPS with 16 for our 1% lows because we had that stutter. It was really smooth except for that one moment with the stutter. All right. Let's try our low settings. All right, so we're on all low settings. Let's see what kind of FPS we get with low settings. Oh, wow, we're getting closer to 100 FPS now in low settings. And low settings still looks pretty dang good. All right, we're walking now. Does this have DisplayPort? No, it does not have DisplayPort. It has a USB-C 3.2 Gen 1, so I'm not sure if that'll do DisplayPort, what level of DisplayPort that'll do. But it does have HDMI 2.1, so it has a good HDMI. So that you can use the HDMI to do high-end display output, basically. All right, so we got 90 FPS in low, 50 for our 1% lows. This is gonna play games just fine. The bigger question so far, it's been being able to play every single game we've thrown at it on ultra settings, but when you switch it to higher low settings, we get dramatically higher FPS as you'd expect, right? So I'm gonna go back to extreme performance mode. Cooler boost enabled. Let's go to the next game. Very interesting. Gizmo, do you think I would be okay with a 4080? Yeah. I mean, a 4080 still churns through games like crazy. So, I mean, I don't think you have to necessarily buy a 4090. A 4080 is still going to provide some great performance all around. All right, let's see here. Next up, we have... Let's do Hogwarts Legacy. This is going to be our 8 gig of RAM test with 8 gigs of DDR5, 4800. Does it have the chops to keep up? Are we going to get a stuttery mess like most of these other low-end laptops that only have 8 gigs of RAM? Mr. Alexander says, my desktop 3090 has 24 VRAM and never fills more than 17, even with most heavy models. So I guess 12 or 16 is a way good for gaming. It really depends on what resolution you're playing at. If you're planning to play a lot of 4K games, that's when I'm like, 4K gaming, you really want to go for really high-end VRAM, the most you can get. You want in a laptop, you want to go for the 4090 if you're going to go for 4K gaming. And if you're going to go for desktop, you want to go for that 4090 probably, because that has 24 gigs. You really want 24 gigs of VRAM if you want to do high-end gaming at 4K. All right, so we are going to do... Right now we're on all low settings. We might as well test low settings since it's loaded up. And then we're going to restart the game and switch everything to Ultra with ray tracing on. Absolute says, don't you think that 40 blank net is kind of fake? Laptop GPUs have never been so cut as compared to desktop versions. Well, I think it's all just a ploy. It's just a ploy by NVIDIA to try to make people think that certain laptop GPUs are more valuable or more worthwhile than they really are, right? I think that's the point of the laptop GPUs. Being upgraded by a factor of 10 now. They've never, the exception of the GTX 1000 series and some of the 2000 series chips, most of them historically with NVIDIA have not matched parity as far as like the actual chip. Matching chip for chip, laptop to desktop. So let's go ahead and, well, I guess we got to run up here first. Oh yeah, look at our stutters we're getting. We're still getting quite a bit of stutters. We've maxed out our RAM here at 7.2 gigs of usage. Right now it's stuttering about every 3 seconds, like a stutter. That was a big stutter. Our FPS is fantastic. If only we had 16 gigs of RAM, right? That's our problem right now. So let me just try one other area of the game on low. I'll try going to the forest. It's a little bit less demanding on the VRAM, I think. I just want to, like, obviously Hogsmeade is going to be a more demanding area. Let's try the forest. Roman says, can you please tell me if a 144 hertz display is good enough for a 4060 card in this laptop? So a 144 hertz display, if you're playing on low settings, most of these AAA games we're getting into the 120 FPS range. Some of them only 80 or 90. I think the bigger problem with this 144 hertz display is that I can tell in certain moments we're definitely getting some ghosting on the image. Just like the Katana 15. So this is definitely not your ideal gaming laptop display without a doubt. All right, without a doubt. And look at our stutters. It is going to be almost impossible to play this laptop, play this game with this laptop without stuttering frequently. Like, you need 16 gigs of RAM. You need it. Not VRAM, regular system RAM. You need 16 gigs. All right. Beautiful. All right, let's go ahead and go to our settings. We're going to set everything to Ultra to do our actual test. And we're going to enable ray tracing. This game is always stuttering bad in that area. Raleigh, you got to check out my XMG Neo 17 video. We did not stutter at all. with the XMG Neo 17. Our 1% lows were like 50 something. Okay, so we got to apply these settings. All right, so we got to restart the game now. When a game will need 16 gig VRAM, we have 8000 series probably. Well, we've already got some games that are not optimized very well that really want higher amounts of VRAM. Really wants like close to 16. Like Hogwarts really wants it. But can you try 720p for Hogwarts Legacy? It just becomes highly CPU bound at that resolution, Mr. Alexander, and your FPS is not going to be that much better, I don't think. Is this DDR5 or 4? This is DDR5 in this laptop, but only 8 gigs of it. So, yeah. How much VRAM do you need in Hogwarts? So if you want ultra textures, you need like 14, 15 gigs of VRAM at QHD. And if you want ultra textures on 4K, you need like more than 16 gigs of VRAM if you want to play 4K. So like in the GT77 Titan, you're literally turning down the textures to not get stutters in Hogwarts. If you want to play at 4K native resolution. That said, you also can down your rendered resolution using DLSS, you know, down to quality, balanced, ultra performance. That'll also reduce how much VRAM you need. So there's ways to optimize in games that have DLSS support to reduce your VRAM requirements. Just dropped into the stream. How's the 4060 doing? So far, we've been able to hit playable frame rates in almost every game. Hogwarts being the major exception so far because, holy schmoly, it's a struggle fest with only 8 gigs of RAM. All right, so we are stuttering. The stutters are long and very poor. I'm really tempted to try popping in an extra set of RAM at the end of the live stream. I just don't think we'll have time today. I think that'll be a separate live stream, is what that's going to be. I'll do it on another live stream. I'll at least do a test with one laptop in a future live stream, where we pop 8 gigs of RAM, an additional 8 gig stick, and we'll test it. All right. So. So this DDR5 one stick will always run dual channel, right? I need to do a little more research on how that works, but my understanding is that it's supposed to function at least better. All right? It's supposed to function better than DDR4 at least. All right, so I want to point out that given our stutteriness, I can tell frame generation is struggling to prevent artifacts from coming up as often. Looking at like the cape here, I'm seeing a little bit more, like a little bit of artifacting around how it moves. But I mean, we're getting stutters all around. So it's kind of just not be a great experience when you're getting long stutters anyway, no matter what. All right, let's go ahead and do a run through Hogwarts and just see what we get. All right, so Hogsmeade. Actually, our 1% lows are doing better now than when it was all on low settings. I don't really understand that. And we're on ultra settings too. There was a big stutter there. But most of the time when we were running there, we actually didn't have that much stuttering there for the first half of the run. 51 FPS, 2%, 2 FPS on our 1% lows. Jesus Christ. Oh my goodness. Oh, jeez. Oh, it was the long stutters. Like a half-second stutters there sometimes. That's when you know you're out of RAM, when it's stuttering that long. See a cat, you got to pet a cat. All right. So, there's Hogwarts for you. Definitely not a good experience. Not recommended. Let's see if Red Dead Redemption will play for us. 4K requires high VRAM. Specifically, this 40,000 series laptop GPUs having reduced memory bus. Interesting thought. I'm not sure exactly how the memory bus affects your VRAM usage. At most, and on a bad optimized game, it will take up to 12% difference, but that's about it. Oh, for your memory performance having better timings. That could be true. Red Dead 2 plays on a cold potato. Well, not on ultra settings. You know, it's not an easy game to run. It's actually a fairly graphically demanding game. But I'm anticipating we should be able to get playable frame rates at least. All right, so we're at 1080p. We want VSync turned off. Let's go ahead and apply those changes. All right, and then we click here and we go all the way to the right and we apply those changes. And then we're just gonna go down here. So basically the game's on all ultra settings with no DLSS. That's the important thing. We want no DLSS, just want it to be a raw run. Let's go ahead and run this. See what we get. At full HD, you don't need too much VRAM. Yeah, full HD is a lot less VRAM requirements. I think you'll be okay for a while on 8 gigs of VRAM. Even Hogwarts is okay, I think, on 8 gigs of VRAM for full HD. Especially if you have DLSS enabled. What laptop do I suggest? The price does not matter. Well, the laptop I picked so far for this year is the Blade 18 RTX 4090. So if price does not matter, that's the one I picked. Check out my benchmarks video. It did really well against the competition, while still being fairly thin, light, and portable with a great display and phenomenal speakers, Windows Hello, good webcam, and great ports. So I really like the Blade 18 right now. It's probably my top reviews. Yeah, it's my personal favorite laptop. Not necessarily the best for everyone though. All right, memory bus makes a difference for specific 4060 because it only runs at 5500 megahertz. If you have, unable to connect, as a typical MSI laptop is, we are unable to run Red Dead Redemption because I think MSI software blocks the Red Dead licensing key service, so it cannot authenticate the game properly. It's happened on every MSI that I've tested this year so far. It makes me a sad panda. I should really report this bug to MSI so they can start troubleshooting it. Okay. Let's hop into Shadow of the Tomb Raider next. Still a very demanding game. We've got RTX and DLSS in Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Red Dead is still not stopping in the background. I might have to end the task on Red Dead. We're going to end task. Okay, looks like we might have to reboot to get Red Dead to even leave the system. Feels bad, man. Red Dead is, yeah, Rockstar with their DRM key licensing problems. It's, at least they don't limit the number of laptops you can install it on. I've had games where like I've installed it on 5 PCs and then I can no longer play that game anymore on another PC, which is even worse, but yeah. Juan Jose says, what would you recommend for 60 FPS up in gaming within $1,800 on the best screen for design? Oh my, that's quite a specification. So you want the best screen for $1,800. All right, so what you want to do, you want to go to my list, You want to sort by display quality. And then you want to set your price cap down to $1,800. All right. And so here are the laptops. Well, if we're doing display quality. Interesting. Some of these don't have prices. Best quality display, though. How about we'll just do display quality above 85%. That might be better. And then, oh, interesting. It doesn't like filtering by display quality, it doesn't look like. We'll clear that. Let's just manually raise it up. Can we do it manually? There we go. And now, for display quality, looks like Legion 5 Pro. Interesting. RTX 4050, QHD 240 Hz 500 nits display. 1639. That would be pretty good, but it's not a very high color gamut display. So instead, let's focus on laptops that are near the top here. So $1,800. You got the Strix G17. Oh, this one would be good for you. It's got a QHD 240 Hz 300 nits display, but it's a very high color gamut panel. That's the key here. So Strix G17, QHD. Yeah, and this has got a phenomenal processor. And it's got an RTX 4060. So this has got a really great display, really great processor. Should be great for design work. This would be the laptop probably for you at $1,800. All right. I hope that's helpful. You know, the Legion laptops are pretty good options, but their display color gamuts are, like, it's only 100% sRGB. And if you're going after design work, I would want 100% P3 color gamut. So that laptop is not as bright, but the display is colorful. So, and it should be like 350 nits probably, which is going to be good enough. Do we know when the Legions are shipping? That Strix is going to be a hot one. That's the one I want. Yeah, a lot of people are going to want that Ryzen Strix G17. All right, let's see here. Exit that. We got to exit a few things here. All right. Let's get into our next test. Shadow of the Tomb Raider, if we can. i9-13980HK versus i9-13950HK. It's basically the same processor. I would not worry about paying much extra. It's like a slightly higher bend processor. It might be a little bit faster, like 1 or 2% faster. So if it's more than 1 or 2% higher end price, then it's probably not worth the extra money. Yeah. So I would say the i9, the difference between an i9-13980HX and i9-13900HX, the price difference is probably going to be like $100 to $200, depending on, maybe $200 would be my guess. And the performance difference is going to be pretty small, but maybe like 3% or something, 3 to 5%, maybe somewhere in there. But if it's more, the realistic thing is, though, that it's going to be more about whether you can undervolt and if you have the good thermals on it to push the CPU to a higher level. Because if you have a low TDP, non-undervoltable, highest end processor from Intel, and you put that against an i9-13900HX that costs less, that's binned less, but you can undervolt it and raise the TDP on it, you're going to get more performance on the i9-13900HX by a good margin. So it's really more about how you can tune it and what the performance thermals look like and all of that. That's more important. All right, so in this game, we are doing like it was doing initially 40 watts to the CPU and only 25 watts to the GPU, but we switched. Now we're doing 41 watts to the GPU, 43 watts to the GPU, 25 to the CPU. Hey, we're actually doing 44 watts, 46 watts. Wow. All right, that's phenomenal. I'm glad we're actually getting some proper wattage. This is the first game where we're seeing 45 watts to the GPU. Good stuff. RAM is maxed out again. Can you put in another stick? Well, Mitchell, it's interesting that our performance so far has actually been very good in every game except Hogwarts. And like I said, I'm gonna do 16 gigs of stick versus 8 gigs stick RAM testing here in another live stream. I just don't want to, I don't have time to do it today. We only have about a half hour or so left on the live stream. So I want to make sure to get as many games test in as we can right now. And just switching out the RAM, taking 2 laptops apart to grab RAM sticks, that would take up the whole end of the live stream. So okay, so looking up at the sky here on the mountain, we're doing over 144 FPS. Not terrible. Actually doing pretty good. This game, all ultra settings, DLSS on quality, ray tracing on ultra. Again, still playable. All right? Even at the the low wattage TDP of 45 watts to the GPU. That's impressive. Well, this guy, you say it could boost more often because of 45 watts with 16 gigs of RAM too, you think? Maybe we become less CPU bound and it can boost more, maybe. But the thing is, this has DDR5 RAM in it. I think that what you're talking about would be more applicable to DDR4 RAM. But yeah. You know, that might be interesting too. Like, what if we did a 16 gig stick DDR5 versus 2 8 gig sticks? So one stick of 16 gig versus 2 8 gig sticks in dual channel, both in DDR5. Doing that test side by side could be pretty interesting to see for optimization as well. So we got 86 FPS right here in the Cyborg 15 and Shadow of the Tomb Raider. So another game on ultra settings, 1080p, playing perfectly with no problem, even with the 8 gigs of RAM. Let's try Witcher 3. Do 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 do. Geralt is in the world of Fortnite. Discover the school of the llama. Frank King, $10 donation super chat. Thank you so much. That'll help me buy dinner tonight. Thanks for all you do to help everyone. No problem, man. That's my goal. Like that's my whole ethos as a reviewer. I just want to make as helpful of content as possible. That's my focus. If I'm doing that, I'm doing my job correctly. All right. So ray tracing is on ultra, DLSS is on quality. 1080p frame generation enabled. Ray tracing on ultra, DLSS on quality. Yep. Okay. I don't know. For some reason, some of the settings changed, so I'm glad I went back and double checked it. Cool. 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 Anyway, yeah. My ethos as a reviewer is that if I'm doing my job right, my channel should be just super helpful. If I'm not helping people, then what I'm doing. That's like my whole business model around my business. The more helpful I am, the better at my job. So, Brett Allen says, I forget, did the M16 let you use Intel XTU? Yes, it did. It let me change the power limits at least, but I did not go around disabling core isolation and other settings to try to optimize Intel XTU more. So it did not let me do undervolting without disabling those additional settings. So that's the thing though. So, all right. So let's see how we do. So we're on all ultra settings. So there's a lot of things you can do in The Witcher to optimize your frame rate to get like over 100. You can turn ray tracing off. You could turn DLSS down to like balanced mode. You could turn other settings down to medium or low and really boost your FPS. But on all ultra settings, it looks like it's still going to be pretty dang playable. 52 FPS so far in our average. So one of the big differences between this laptop and one of the competitor laptops, the Acer Nitro 5, is I think the Acer Nitro 5 should have a higher TDP limit. The one that's being shipped to me right now from Newegg. So I'm very curious to see how that performs versus this one. Notice that we are pulling 45 watts on the GPU once again. All right, so 57, 46, that's excellent. Very playable. It's not gonna, you know, let's just quickly try lowering the settings and seeing what we get like on low settings. We'll set it to low, DLSS on quality, frame generation still enabled. All right, so on low settings, we're doing 128. I gotta go south here. There it goes. So now we're in the 120s, right? So if you want to play on ultra, you get like 55, 60 FPS. You want to play on low settings for the high refresh rate 144 hertz display, you can do that and still get like 120 FPS in The Witcher 2, or in The Witcher 3, I mean. So it's nice. It's really nice to see that this laptop has a lot of versatility. Let's get into, let's do Apex Legends. And let's see the ghosting and the responsiveness of this display for esports. Okay, so checking out chat. Okay. Michelle says why, but in this specific laptop vitamin, it's just DDR5 has higher latency, more FPS on balanced. Yep, we had more FPS on balanced in some games, so that's pretty interesting. And I gotta say, the fan noise on balanced was very quiet. Very minimal fan noise on balanced. GML says, is the best for gaming 4080 laptop also the best high-end video editing? Using multiple 6K red footage streams, can you cut certain gaming features and still have the highest end video editing performance? So the highest end video editing performance is going to be with the RTX 4080 and 4090 because it has two of the encoding nodes inside the GPU versus the RTX 4050, 60, and 70 only have one. So basically you get twice of, like 2 times the throughput if you're going to at least use them, leverage them. All right. So if you're primarily doing video editing, I really recommend the 4080 and 4090. Okay, so we're repositioning for Apex Legends. We're going to go into our firing range. If you're cutting non-proxy red footage, you're crazy. Yeah, depending on the codec and the resolution and all that, it's true. Real Human asks, what do you do with all the laptops after you're done testing them? Great question. So I have a membership program. I'm reselling the laptops when I'm done testing them. And if you want to join that membership program, you can do that by clicking the join button. And then you want to fill out the waiting list and you could become a member and potentially buy one of my laptops after I get done reviewing it. Now, if I don't like the laptop, I don't recommend it. I am not going to be reselling it to my members. I'm going to be returning it because it's a crappy laptop and it should not have been purchased. And yeah, so that's kind of what I'm doing with the laptops. The other thing is I do also get a lot of laptops from manufacturers. So those review units like the Zephyrus Duo 16 that I got from Asus, that is going to go back to Asus because I didn't pay for that. I didn't buy that, so I can't sell that. All right. Okay, so I have talked about this before. I'm going to make a dedicated video about it sometime in the future here. Okay, so all right, so just moving around the mouse, I can see some ghosting on the display, and we're not hitting our 144 FPS cap here on high settings. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with a test. Oh, I got my sensitivity is too high on the mouse. Okay, so all right. You know, this is not bad. It's not an ideal esports gaming experience because of the ghosting. But I think most people who are more casual esports players that aren't as picky, they're going to be just fine with the display. But most hardcore gamers are going to want a different display. This has definitely got some noticeable ghosting, and its response rate is not terrible though. Like, I feel like I can control my aim, but you got to also have, like, the ghosting can cause visual clutter in the gameplay, you know? So, all right, let's try changing our settings to low. All right, so everything low except for textures. Oh, and I forgot to change the FPS cap. I mean, if you were using this laptop for yourself, you probably want to just keep it at 144, but I just raised it up to 300 so we can see the performance better. Is this a VA panel? I believe so, Steve. I'm not sure, though. Is the ghosting as bad as the G5? It's about the same, real human. I would say that they're about the same level of panel for ghosting. I need to try again on the G5, but it's not. The G5 had better brightness. It was a little bit better display all around compared to this one, though. It had better brightness and slightly better color gamut. But it's not like this display is fantastic in overall sense, right? Like, this is a budget display on a budget laptop. And there's definitely better displays to be had for the money. So if you're a hardcore esports player, I would say don't buy this laptop. Go buy the MSI Delta 15 that I talked about earlier in the live stream, because it is a much better esports gaming machine than this one. It may not be as good as single player games when you factor in frame generation as this one, but when you're just looking at esports gaming potential, the Delta 15 is going to be so much better than this laptop. All right. Like, to me, this laptop is more about someone who wants a thin, light, portable laptop. They're going to mainly game indoors. They don't need a very bright display. They're not very picky with their displays, or they're going to use it on an external GPU or an external display. And they're just going to play mainly single player games when they're using the laptop display. And they don't care about maximizing their all around performance. They're just like, they like the look of this one. I don't know. You know, like there's like this, I think there's better bang for the buck options out there. So, but I'm still testing this, and I want to like give it a full potential go, right? Before I decide, can I recommend this or not? I'm giving it a fair shake, basically. When am I reviewing the Aura 17X? Man, I'm getting so many people asking about it now. Oris told me 3 days ago they'll ship it in a week. So however long, it's probably about a week or two away from being reviewed. Probably like 8 to 10 days would be my guess. It's probably going to take 4 or 5 days at least for them to ship it to me. Once it is shipped. All right, I'm gonna try turning on the audio for this game. I'm gonna put the audio to max. All right, so our target FPS is we want at least 144 hertz FPS. All right, if we're doing 144 and the performance is nice and consistent, I'll be happy with the Apex Legends performance of this laptop. Of course, you do have the I actually heard them spatially to my right with the onboard speakers. Which was interesting. I was not expecting that. I've definitely got a little bit of spatial audio awareness here. Like I'm hearing left and right a little bit. I like that. Oh, I got annihilated. I heard you're not supposed to ever power off your laptop with the power button, or you'll run into errors and degrading motherboard power supply. I was told to use standby instead. I'm not sure what you mean by standby instead. Man, then my teammate is kicking tail right now. I have yet to get a kill, and this guy is... My teammate's got a bunch of kills. He keeps taking my kills, though. Oh. Oh my gosh, I keep getting shot by like 4 people at once. And Steven actually says, NVIDIA released new tech every gen to get you to upgrade and lock out the last gen. Well, they didn't lock out DLSS. I think they did do that with frame gen though. And we don't know if they're being truthful about whether 3000 series can use frame gen or not. Man, I have just been unable to get a kill this game. Yeah, it's definitely a bit harder for me to aim right now, but I'm also getting just like totally destroyed in bad situations where I'm being shot by 3 or 4 people at once. It's probably my placement. Like my character placement has been unlucky this round. Yeah, we got one. I mean, our damage is not that great either this round either. Only 550. Now we got a Mozambique, which is like one of the worst weapons in the game. So I think we'll be able to actually finish out this whole game because it's these games go fast. They only last like a couple minutes. Oh! I was so close to killing that guy. Oh no. Getting destroyed here. We only have 4 more kills to get. What game is this? This is Apex Legends. Yeah. Where's my teammates at? Yeah, we killed one point blank with the charge rifle. It's very hard to kill someone with the charge rifle. My teammate is carrying and you end up with a throwing knife to try to get the winning kill. Right now I have a P2020. I got the throwing knife. NVIDIA will probably release DLSS 3 frame generation to 30,000 series later this year, but a huge penalty. Maybe, we'll see. They say it's not compatible with 3000 series. That's their official statement, as far as I know. Awesome. Okay, so very nice. It's time to do 3D Mark Timespy. Let's see what we get. Overall, I mean, the ghosting is present. The ghosting is definitely something I notice. It definitely impacts my ability to aim. If you want an esports gaming laptop, get the MSI Delta 15 for $899. It's cheaper, has a bigger SSD, got 16 gigs of RAM in there. You just don't have DLSS support, frame gen support in that laptop. That's the biggest downside. But in terms of raw rasterization performance, that should be pretty competitive with this laptop. So, all right. ARP says, I wonder how this will perform with a QHD external monitor. I was going to test that, but I do not have time to test that today. What game is this? That was Apex Legends. How does it run when not plugged into a power source? That's a good question. I would anticipate not that well, but maybe it is a little bit better now with the RTX 4000 series for, you know, not plugged in performance. Devin says, I wonder what the pitch was to add all the bad optional graphics. Not sure what you mean. What G18 for 2200? It's 2500 at. Okay, interesting. I mean, there's no way they're going to sell the Strix G18 for a discounted price if it's the full spec version. Okay, so Timespy is a benchmarking software utilized to determine the raw graphics performance potential as well as the CPU performance potential. So let's see what we get. We can't afford more money on laptops because we spend it all on our healthcare and McDonald's. Vitamin K said USA is so much cheaper. That's what was responsive to. That's pretty funny. Anonymous says, will the frame rate drop if you get unplugged? Yes, I'm sure the frame rate is going to drop if you unplug it. It'll enter into a lower performance mode. I'm not sure what level of performance you're looking at though. Can this run Tarkov? I'm pretty sure it can run Tarkov. I have never benchmarked Tarkov though, and so I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure that's not that hard to run. Escape from Tarkov. I'm not sure if it'll run it super smoothly or not. But I'm pretty sure it'd be within the performance window of this machine. All right, so we are doing our full 45 watts of GPU wattage. Our CPU is doing around 18 to 20 watts. All right. Not sure what this is going to translate to in terms of actual performance, but we'll see. Have I seen any more screen flickering? What do you mean, Frank? Are you talking about... I haven't seen any screen flickering on the Cyborg. Honestly, I think the Cyborg is the same disappointing as the GF63 series. What's worse is you can't upgrade the storage with at least with the GF63 you can. You can upgrade the storage in this. You just have to replace the 512 gig SSD with a larger one. You can put a 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte, 8 terabyte SSD into this laptop with the Blade 18. So screen flickering on the Blade 18 is something that's gone away since I have updated the BIOS, updated the graphics card driver, and then switched G-Sync into being full screen only. After changing those three things, I no longer have any flickering on the Blade 18. Typher says, do you think is a con the laptops that don't have mechanical keyboards? I don't think it's so much a con if you don't have a mechanical keyboard as it is a plus if you do have one. I think it's a con if whatever keyboard is implemented doesn't have a good shunk feeling when you press the key. Because even like this Cyborg 15 having a membrane keyboard, it still feels pretty shunky to it. It's got a nice tactile feel to the keyboard for this laptop. Waiting to get a Helio 16 to 18 with the 4000 series. Yeah, I think that could be a good one to wait for if you want a mini LED display. Though if you want a 16-inch mini LED, there is the Scar 16 that has a full TDP power limit. And that, I don't know, I'd probably pick the Scar 16 over the Helio 16. But the 18, I could see why someone would pick the Helios 18 over the Scar 18, given that that has a mini LED display. So let's see what kind of wattage we get in Timespy CPU test. Let's find out. So is it going to pop up? I don't know if we're going to even pop up with the overlay or not. Sometimes it only pops up at the very end. But it's probably like 80 watts probably. Thanks for your thorough work. Yeah, no problem, man. What's up, Manny? Have you heard the Scar 18 got a BIOS update? Undervolting now up to minus 80 millivolts. Yeah, Manny. And my understanding is that now Intel XTU works and you can do entire undervolting now. Total undervolting control. Ooh. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Only 7,544 points in Timespy. 7,544 points. Now, this is only a 45 watt part. So I feel like it's pretty good for a 45 watt part. But that is not that many points in Timespy. You know, what's amazing is that we were doing all of those games. All right, we were playing all of those games on ultra settings, high performance settings, and we were still getting playable frame rate in almost basically every game except Hogwarts today. on the 8 gigs of RAM. And I would not have guessed that we would get that high of frame rate in those games with this low of a Timespy score. Now, our CPU score is actually pretty good at 10,647 for this price point, given that it's an i7 12650H. I feel like the CPU score is very acceptable. The GPU score, though, that's what you get when you only have a 45-watt GPU. All right, pretty interesting. All right, so let's do our wrap-up summary, my thoughts on the laptop. It's time. Let's go ahead and turn the RGB lights on. Okay, so deep thoughts wrap up. Yes, that's the goal. All right. Let me turn it off of extreme performance mode so we don't have loud fans going. Okay. All right. So what did we find out today about the Cyborg 15? The nits brightness on the display, 200 and like, what was it? 223, 230 nits approximately, I believe. About 70% sRGB on the screen, which is okay-ish for this price range. I prefer to get 100% sRGB on any gaming laptop that's like, to me, like the entry level of like a good display is 100% sRGB. So this is like a bare bones, super budgety display, not for someone that's very picky about their displays. We also saw some ghosting in esports titles. The contrast ratio on the display is pretty good though, so that's kind of how it might maybe fools some people into thinking that's a little better display than it is because of the contrast ratio. And if you're going to play indoors gaming primarily in dimly lit environments mainly, the display will work for playing games and you'll be able to enjoy your gameplay experience. It's not like it's not going to ruin your gameplay experience. The problem primarily with the display is primarily when you compare it to other laptops that just have better displays for the same money, right? If you want a better display for the same money, I went over a bunch of other options at the beginning of this live stream, okay? And you can find links to all those laptops that I recommended in that section, okay? If you're after a laptop with a higher end display, don't buy this laptop. That's just a fact, okay? If you're gonna need to use this laptop in outdoor or brightly lit environments, again, I don't think I can recommend this laptop. If you're primarily going to use it in a darker environment, this laptop will work. And if you're not picky about your color gamut, this laptop will also work for you in that scenario. The keyboard and trackpad I thought were very good for the price point. I like the layout overall for a 15-inch laptop. The webcam, which we did not test, let's go ahead and just do a quick webcam test. All right, so here is the webcam. There's the webcam for you right there. It's better than the XMG webcam by a little bit, but it's not amazing. I mean, this will work for a Skype call. It's kind of your average crappy webcam from a gaming laptop, though. Certainly nothing special, but it'll work. And it worked. Like the color replication is definitely like a little bit dull and quite a bit noisy here in the image. But the webcam will work just fine for doing a quick Skype call or whatever. But if you need a higher end webcam, this is not the laptop for you. In terms of ports, the ports on this guy are pretty minimal, but at least the ports that are included on this laptop are high quality ports with USB-C 3.2 and HDMI 2.1, which is let you do a high refresh rate display like the one behind me. So at least you got some options if you want to do like 4K 120 hertz for some reason. Not that you'll be able to play very many games at that resolution, like almost none, only like esports games, maybe some of them. But like you could do QHD 240 hertz displays for some esports games on this laptop and realistically hit 240 frames per second, probably in some titles like CSGO, Valorant, stuff like that are attainable on a laptop like this. But that's only for esports games, not your typical AAA gaming titles at all. All right. The fan noise on this guy is moderately loud for a single fan. It gets up to like 55, 56 decibels, which is fairly loud for a one fan system. That's only in extreme performance mode. In balanced mode, we were seeing minimal fan noise, and the speakers do get moderately loud. So you can definitely play some games on this with your balanced mode, like Cyberpunk or whatever. And that was the big thing for me with this, is that if you do want to play games and you're willing to tweak the settings, well, even if you don't tweak the settings, you can get playable frame rates in every game we tested except for Hogwarts. If you want to be able to play Hogwarts, you need to slap a second 8 gig stick of RAM in here. That's the big drawback here. Some games like Star Citizen, Hogwarts, you really want 16 gigs of RAM. 8 gigs is simply not enough. Okay? So that's a very important consideration. If you buy this laptop, I would plan on getting 16 gigs of RAM, because just using an internet browser and using different tasks on the machine will use up all 8 gigs of RAM. And so you might even get reduced performance in your Windows usage of the device. So plan to buy an additional 8 gig stick if you get this, but most likely, if in an ideal world, I would really recommend other laptops with better displays over this laptop. Now, if you did buy this laptop, you can still get great frame rates and in games, right? Like, you can still enjoy the crap out of your gaming experience with this machine. It's not like it's an awful gaming experience. I think that's the important takeaway from this review, is that while this thing is, I think, a mediocre value at $1,100, it's still a functioning laptop. We had no deal breaker problems like we did with the Gigabyte G5 with the power adapter cutting out on us. Like, we reliably played games, no problem, except for Hogwarts. I think the ideal price range for this, though, is not $1,100. If you're going to buy the Cyborg 15, wait for it to go on sale. Buy it for, like, I feel like an RTX 4050 version of this should be $700. An RTX 4060 version of this should probably be $800. That's a good value. $800 for this is a good buy. Given its display quality and all the ports and everything included, at $1,100, it's just, to me, overpriced for what you're getting. That's kind of my takeaway right now. I think this laptop will go on sale later this year, probably for like $900 at least. And at $900, I'd say it's a decent deal. $800 would be an excellent deal. $700 for the 4050 version would be a great deal. $900 for the 4050 version will be an okay deal. But I can pretty much guarantee you we will see Black Friday sales on this laptop coming up for that $800, $900 price range for the 4060. So we'll have to see. Yeah, so can I recommend this laptop? Yes, especially if you can get it on sale, but not really, because there's better laptop options out there. Does that make sense? Like, it's a functioning, decent quality, all-around experience playing games on here, but it's just not as good as what you would get if you bought that MSI Delta 15, the Zephyrus G14 for $1,000. But there's going to be other options too with 4060 and 4050 GPUs around this price point that I think will be better than this one. That'll have higher TDPs, that'll have better displays. There's just, this one's available first. So a lot of people are interested in this one and figuring out if it's worth buying. And that's why I really wanted to focus on covering it, giving you guys a real true hands-on experience with it. Because I think it's important to recognize that this can play games. It can play games really well. And someone who's not that picky with their display would probably love this laptop. I don't know. It's got a nice look to it. It's got a good keyboard, good trackpad. Using the laptop in general will be just fine, especially if you upgrade the RAM to 16 gigs. So, all right. So, checking chat before we end the live stream for any Q&A. All right. Manny says, I wonder why all the laptops, even the flagships, are for $5,000 are always awful. Even the Blade 18. The Blade 18, I like the webcam on the Blade 18. I think it's pretty good. It's a 5 megapixel webcam on the Blade 18. It's not 1080p. And I would say that the Blade 18 webcam is here. I can show you the Blade 18 webcam right now. Actually, this is the Blade 18 webcam. I'm on the Blade 18 webcam right now. It's a 5 megapixel camera, and it's I think a pretty decent value, pretty decent quality. So I wouldn't say it's amazing, but it's way better than any other laptop webcam I've tried in years. So all right. Steve Onashia says, this is a good college laptop. Spill beer on a frat party and no harm done. At least a lot less harm done compared to like a $3,000 laptop or something. Yes Smith says, TLDR, it's not bad, but there are better options. Yeah, that's kind of a good summary of my thoughts on the Cyborg 15. It's like, it's not awful, but there's better display options out there, especially if you go with older gen tech, or if you're patient and you can get an RTX 4050 or 4060 laptop from another manufacturer that's going to put a better display in the laptop and have better cooling for higher TDP. Those are the two things about this laptop that are not quite deal breakers, but they're like close to being a deal breaker. So that's why I'm thinking, like, if you can buy this on sale for $800, that's a great value. That's a great deal. And yeah, so that's really what I would wait for this laptop. Wait for it to go on sale. All right. Mom, can we have a laptop? Mom, we have a laptop at home. The laptop at home is this one. Oh my God. I like the way you think. Am I going to test the Flow X13 or X16? I would love to test the Flow X16. Asus, send me one. So yeah, there's my review of the Cyborg 15. Very interesting laptop. Wait to buy it on sale or buy something else with better display and GPU TDP. I think that's a fair summary of the device. That's it for this live stream, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one. Brandon, out.